Marjorie Egan. Then it's
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. The anti-abortion March for Life gets underway this hour in Washington, D.C. with a concert. This year's event will feature Vice President Vance as a speaker. President Trump has offered clemency to several anti-abortion activists. They've been jailed for blocking women's clinics that provide abortions.
I just signed a pardon, and in the pardon we released 23 people that were unjustly put in having to do with pro-life. And they will be released, and they'll be out very shortly.
Trump spoke at the White House this morning as he left for North Carolina. He's going to Asheville to review Hurricane Helene recovery efforts. After his North Carolina visit, Trump will then fly to Los Angeles. He's going to review efforts to fight the devastating wildfires in the region. These have killed at least 28 people. California Governor Gavin Newsom has approved new disaster aid for Los Angeles. From member station KQED, Gar Maserati has more.
Newsom signed a $2.5 billion relief package that will fund cleanup and sheltering those affected by the fires. But the governor also wants to spend more money to fight the Trump administration in court over issues like immigration.
I'm here for the long haul to support the president where we can, to defend our values where we must.
Trump has threatened to withhold disaster aid from California over disagreements on water policy. For NPR News, I'm Guy Maserati in San Jose.
In the Middle East, Hamas has identified 4 female Israeli soldiers who are supposed to be released tomorrow. This is part of the Gaza ceasefire agreement between Hamas and Israel. The agreement also calls for Israel to release about 200 Palestinian prisoners and detainees. The ceasefire deal has halted fighting in Gaza since last weekend. The Trump administration has revoked security protection for former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and former Iran envoy Brian Hook. As NPR's Ryan Lucas reports, this comes after President Trump decided to pull the security detail for his one-time national security advisor, John Bolton.
A person familiar with the situation told NPR the administration pulled the security protection for Pompeo and Hook on Wednesday. Mike Pompeo, Brian Hook, and John Bolton had received security details from the U.S. government because of threats from Iran. Iranian officials have publicly stated they want to avenge the death of Qasem Soleimani, an Iranian general who was killed in a U.S. drone strike during Trump's first term in office. The Justice Department charged an Iranian national in 2022 with plotting to kill Bolton. Iran also has plotted against Trump, and the Biden administration beefed up Trump's security this past summer in light of those threats. Ryan Lucas, NPR News, Washington.
On Wall Street, stocks are lower. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down nearly 100 points at 44,471. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. State Attorney General Andrea Campbell pushing on several fronts for a crackdown on student cell phone use in school. She told a meeting of Massachusetts superintendents yesterday that her office is offering districts a toolkit with best practices to help them create their own policies addressing phone use in the classroom. Mary Bork, who heads the Mass Association of School Superintendents, likes the idea, saying cell phones and social media are causing problems.
In educational attainment, academics, because of the distraction, it's also a decrease in community.
Campbell is also co-sponsoring a bill called the Study Act, which would ban cell phones during school hours statewide. The Study Act, which requires legislative approval, was introduced last week, and there's much more on this coming right up on BPR with Jim and Marjorie. Well, you know that big, beautiful Apple store at 815 Boylston Street in the Back Bay? Apple Inc. just plunked down $88 million for the whole 3-story building. Boston Business Journal reports that the seller of the building is London-based Rebecca Holdings. Apple usually leases the spaces where its stores operate, and according to the report, the sale represents one of the largest real estate deals in Massachusetts in recent years. In sports, the Bruins and Celtics are off until tomorrow. In the forecast, mostly sunny and dry for the next few days. Low 30s today and tomorrow, hitting 40 degrees on Sunday. 27 outside our studios. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people. and the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, helping NPR advance journalistic excellence in the digital age.
Here's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. Thank you. Live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We want to mention that Mayor Michelle Wu has got a newborn, about a few days old now, but nonetheless, she's going to zoom into the show on Monday at noon for another edition of Ask the Mayor. We won't be here. We'll be in Brighton, but she'll be zooming in. Hi, Jim.
Hi. How are you, Marjorie?
Good.
Good to see you.
Hanging in.
As you just heard Henry say on the news, Attorney General Andrea Campbell is the latest public voice in a growing chorus of support for a ban on teen cell phone use in schools. Filed last week, it's called the Study Act. It's a bill that would impose a ban on cell phone use in public schools from, as she put it, bell to bell. The idea is to help rid kids of distractions during school hours, lessen the negative mental health impacts of near constant social media use. It comes at a time as the New York Post clickbaity story warns that cell phones are turning American youth into, quote, this is the New York Post, hallucinating, reality-detached aggressors. Bombastic fear-mongering aside, is the AG right to set her sights on teenage phone use during school hours? Are you a parent who's been waiting for the state to step in, or should this fall in the purview of the kids' parents themselves, individual school administrators, whatever? 877-301-8970 is the number to call or text. This is on the heels of Joe Biden's Surgeon General warning last year about cell phones and young minds. According to this study in the New York Post, something like 20% of 13-year-olds have experienced hallucinations. Why do I keep quoting this? From cell phone use. You buying that? And if you are a hallucinating teenager yourself, listening to Marjorie and me during third period study hall, please call in. We'd love to hear from you at 877-301-8970. You're all for this, right?
Well, we're going to get a lot of calls and texts today, as we always do, about parents saying they want to be able to reach their kids.
It's ridiculous in an emergency.
Or they want to reach their kid in general, tell them they forgot their algebra book or what time they're going to pick them up. But you have to balance, or school shooting. Thank God we're not at the point where everybody's going to have a school shooting in their school. So you have to balance. It's very unlikely chance of a school shooting. We're still at that point, thank goodness, with the fact that, Surgeon General says it's screwing up kids, mental health, social bullying, all these terrible things. They're not learning in school. The teachers, the MTA, I'm not a big fan of the MTA.
Oh, really? I hadn't noticed that.
But the MTA is absolutely right on this. That they have heard from their members that this is really hurting kids and it's doing terrible things to their growth and mental health and anxiety and depression. So I think that the evidence is overwhelming. Get rid of them. I mean, it's
the Pew Center did a nationwide survey of high school teachers who said that 72% of high school teachers thought this was a major distraction, having cell phones. Can I also take issue with, well, not take issue, or respond to your thing about emergencies and parents saying that? Explain to me how, if there's an emergency and a school shooter in your school, you want the kid to be talking to the parent while this is going on, rather than listening to an authority figure telling them what to do, how to hide, whatever the hell you're going to do. I mean, I understand the emotional thing, and I'm sure I'd want that too. It's ridiculous. There is no argument. We've done this a bunch of times through the years, long before a bunch of states.
We already got one. We already got one. How are they going to call 911 during a school shooting?
I don't even know if that's a serious. Is that a serious thing? How about all the adults in the school? Maybe they'll call 911.
Well, the thing is that the overwhelming evidence is your kid is going to be really screwed up, and they're probably not going to have a school shooting ever.
Probably not.
So it's kind of like the evidence is in, and it's really hurting out. I mean, you see it with all the kids.
Can we pause for a second? What? You're missing out on Melania in Asheville, North Carolina.
Oh, my goodness. She's got big sunglasses on.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that's the whole thing, but that's a piece of the thing. It seems like she's about to pilot a 747 over to... whatever. In any case, getting back, the question is, what do you think about banning cell phones in schools? We'd love to hear recent graduates, by the way, and what your cell phone issues were when you were in school. Was it a problem? Would you like to have been a ban? And by the way, you know what this is like to me? And I have to compliment Campbell for doing this, and I think Senator Sear from the Cape.
And she's got 2 young kids, too.
I know she does. But the thing why this is so important, this is analogous to the discussion we had a month or so ago about how do you take the keys away from your grandfather. and who shouldn't be driving. And the solution is, because most people don't have the strength to be able to do that, is let the state figure out a way to do it instead. Like we talked about, like a mandatory driver's test when you're over 70 or whatever. In this situation, if a parent can't do it, the school system is doing it for them, which is, I think, a wonderful way to deal with it. So 877-301-8970. We're not going to yell at you if you call and say that you think your kid needs a phone for whatever, emergencies, or to let them know what time you're picking them up, or whatever the deal is.
And I heard a podcast the other day about this, and I got the story this morning about they have these little YONDR cell phone pouches that have been bought up by a lot. They're magnetic, and you give the kids the pouches, and they go in there, and they're locked during the day, and they're away from them all day long. And
they do that at a lot of theaters, like the Wilbur down the street does that.
I went to see that John Maloney, I always get his name wrong. Mulaney, he's great.
Close enough.
He's a riot.
Whatever, Mahoney.
If you want to feel good, watch some of his things
what about
on
him?
TV or YouTube. He's a riot. But anyway, yeah, you put the phone in there, and you didn't get it at the beginning of the show. And somebody else was saying this about when I was listening to the guy who did these Yoda things, talking about concerts. If you go to a concert now, everybody's in there, the concert starts in a half an hour, everybody's in there on their cell phone the whole time waiting for the concert to kind of not participating in the whole atmospherics of the concert. And so many concerts or church services or funerals or anything else are ruined by people on their cell phones.
How much do you love the stories, as long as it's not you, the occasional story when they're in the middle of a symphony at the Philharmonic or something, and the conductor stops playing and turns around. Oh, you know who did it? Cumberbatch. Benedict Cumberbatch was acting in a play, Sherlock Holmes and other things, was acting in a play in London. I'm pretty sure this is right. And his cell phone went off. He stopped the performance, turned to the audience, and excoriated the fool. By the way, our colleagues found a new New York Post study. This is out just moments ago. It's breaking news. Excessive cell phone use is linked to teenage taste for human blood and glowing red eyes.
Wait a minute.
That's the latest.
I think, is that true?
That is totally true.
Oh, my God.
Totally true.
Well, it is the New York Post. It's owned by Rupert
Oh,
Murdoch that owns Fox News. You're joking, right?
I think we are.
He's not. He's a little bit. He's joking a little bit.
I'd say a little bit, yeah.
But this is the same guy that owns Fox News, so you never know what they're doing.
He was your boss for a while,
He was. Yep.
Didn't you have to interview him when he bought the paper, the Herald?
I did. Yeah.
How'd that go?
Well, I was following around. I was a young reporter then when he bought the Herald. I was following him around, asking him a million questions, and then he finally pushed me aside and said, "I've heard enough from you, kid."
He was going to hit on you, but you're only 30 years younger than he was.
Well,
that wasn't enough.
He had his first wife with him at the time, Jim.
How old was she, like 19?
No, she was his age. Actually, she was beautiful.
Really?
Anna Murdoch. She's the mother of the children. Yeah, most of the children anyway.
Okay.
877-301-8970. These Yoda pouch deals, what they do is
you have stock in the company?
No,
or
but
what?
I think it's a beautiful solution. The kids lock their phones in the pouch. They're away from them all day long, and they leave. They unlock the pouch at the exit by the door.
That's fabulous.
Isn't that great?
Okay, want to mention it again?
No.
Tina in Rhode Island, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Welcome, Tina. How are you?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Sure.
So I have 3 teenagers, and 2 of them are in high school. And recently, both schools have banned cell phone use, one private school, one public school.
Oh.
And I have to say, I think that my children are relieved.
Yeah.
When you say you think they're relieved,
they don't,
have they said it to you?
They don't seem to care that much.
Oh, that's good.
The idea was upsetting to them, but the reality seemed to have gone off without a hitch. And I think they themselves realize they're addicted, and it gives them the willpower that they don't have.
I think that's pretty grown up.
To mind,
Yeah, go ahead.
like about 10 years ago, I remember reading a column about cell phone etiquette. And the advice columnist said, well, what I can say is if it's not appropriate to pull out a crossword puzzle, then it's not appropriate to pull out your phone.
That's pretty good.
like if you're at dinner with a date or something, or at a meeting.
Yeah,
like,
but this is not about rudeness, and I'm totally with you on the crossword phone.
No, I know.
This is about a distraction from a kid trying to learn what they should be learning.
You know what I wonder, Tina, because from what I've read, a lot of kids may be horrified at the beginning of this, but then, like you said, if your kids, they do like it, and one of the reasons they like it is because nobody has their phone. It's not like Johnny has his phone and Susie doesn't. Nobody has their phone, so they can't, be worried about something going on with somebody else or some plan being set up that they're not aware of, because everybody's out of the loop, as it were. Is that part of it with your kids?
I think so. Yeah, I think because it just becomes a group, a group effort to constantly be staring at the phone. But also, in terms of the etiquette, I realize that school is a child's job. We don't go to our workplaces and stare at our phones while we're at meetings.
Well,
mostly.
We do. Margie and I do.
I used to say it to my kids. Right? But I used to say it to my kids as a guideline for when is it appropriate to use a phone? Well, if you're in the classroom and you're doing physics, you shouldn't be doing the crossword, right? It's totally unrelated. So why should you be on your phone?
We got it.
It's just like an interesting way to illustrate the rudeness,
Tina, thank you very much for your call. I'm glad it's working out. You know why our kids are okay? They probably have burner phones that they're taking to school with them. Well, that was one of the things that they're worried that people are going to have burner phones. But again, if nobody can get your messages because you're the only one with the burner phone, it kind of takes away some of the excitement. You know what I mean? I think I do.
You get the burner phone, they're not going to get your message till 2 o'clock or whatever it is. An anonymous texter says, can you please repeat everything you both said for the last 10 minutes? Because I was actually texting my friends on my cell phone and not listening to us at all, Jim.
Well, that's the point. Rebecca in Westboro texts, what do the schools do about wearables? Apple Watches, Fitbits, that you can see and reply to text. Can you contact the Attorney General's office during this discussion? Ask her that question. What about wearables? What do you do about that? And by the way, there's a book we should have mentioned in the beginning that everybody is in love with. It's sold zillions of copies. Jonathan Haidt, I did a thing with his chief researcher. Remember the day after the election, you did something with Heather Cox Richardson at the Kennedy School.
McNamara.
I did something about cell phones and other things, about the anxious generation. Haidt's book at Endicott College. Mine was much better attended, as you know.
And actually, it's the other way around.
And as you know, and he's basically saying, and a lot of people are loving this, no phones or social media at all until you're 16. And then even when you get them at 16, you can't bring them to school.
Well, you know who limits their children on all this stuff is China.
Oh.
The Anxious Generation was the book, How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. Steve in Rhode Island, thank you for calling.
Hi, Steve.
Well, you're getting your second Rhode Island in a row here.
Yeah, we love Rhode Island.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Awesome. Here's the take. This is an anecdotal from the trenches.
Please.
I substitute teach on a regular basis in Bristol, Rhode Island.
Oh, what a pretty town.
And it's a great town.
Yeah.
And the superintendent had this notion that we're going to get rid of cell phones starting in January. And the first time I went into the school, the kids still have their computers, so they go and do all the research that they do digitally on their personal Chromebooks, but the phones are gone. And I wandered over to the cafeteria, which I sometimes do during lunchtime, and it was particularly noisy, and I spoke to one of the lunch ladies and said, wow, what's going on today? And they said, well, there's been a big change. And I said, what's that? They said, well, we used to have these kids on cell phones in December, and you walk into the cafeteria and it's crickets. But now they're talking to each other.
Exactly right. That's, by the way, I'm really glad you added that to the discussion because we hadn't. That is huge. I mean, actual human-to-human exchange, it's huge. Steve, thanks for adding that to the conversation. We appreciate it.
Karina just texted from Newton. She says she has a senior in high school, found out about no cell phone use there all during school. I guess they do let them use them during lunch there, but maybe they shouldn't. But anyway, she said this will be great for her because if everyone cannot use their phone, she doesn't feel pressured to respond right away to her friends and to be able to pay more attention in class. She's thriving academically.
That's great. You know, this is maybe only anecdotal, but we've been doing this for 10 minutes. This is the longest we've ever gone on this, where you're not reading texts from people saying this is an outrage. Maybe parents are coming around to this and realizing.
Well, I did read the shooting thing right at the beginning.
I was one. one. I mean, there's one. Usually
I
we're
haven't gotten
inundated
any more
with these.
yet.
Well, it's good to hear.
Yep.
Janet and Milton, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Well, I was a school administrator in Boston Public Schools.
Great.
For 33 years and spent a lot of time arguing over phones, fighting over phones. But on some level, it feels very much more nuanced than just a blanket ban.
Why?
Well, for example, a lot of the people you're hearing from Newton, the suburbs, the kids have laptops, they have access to technology. We often were very short on computers. Kids needed their phones to do internet research. So it feels like there's some equity issues.
What happens when a kid doesn't have a phone with internet access?
Well, pretty much most of the kids have phones, and the school has Wi-Fi. We also had a lot of multilingual kids whose English isn't their first language, and a lot of the translation apps were on the phones. I'm not against it. I'm just saying that.
Well, Janet, can I interrupt you? The solution is when the Attorney General is here with us next, I'm guessing her response to you would be, if this were to go, I'm not authorized to speak for her, if this were to go into effect, any kid whose family can't afford for them to have some sort of device at school that is actually connected to learning should have to have it supplied to them by the school system. I mean, you make a good point, but it's not a good enough point to not ban phones. It's a good enough point to say whatever the kid needs to have a decent education, if they can't afford it, should be provided to them.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you brought it up, Janet. Your microphone's up in the air. Janet, thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
I'm also surprised at not having access to Chromebooks because everyone was getting them in poor districts all during the pandemic, remember?
There may be some holes, though, some gaps. We don't know.
Yep. Here's a parent that doesn't like this. I'm a parent, senior in high school, credible threat made to their school. The school went into lockdown. I could not disagree with you more about banning cell phones. The kids put the phones up in front of in the class for most classes, so it's really just between classes. I thank heaven my child has her phone with her to tell me what's going on. I could tell her what I was hearing so I could keep her calm. Not sure what the confusion is over having the ability to call 911. I'd rather have my child the ability to call ASAP. The rest of it went off the page. It's too long.
What's that person's name?
They didn't sign it, or if they did.
Can I ask you a question? Could you please call us at 877-301-8970? Tell whoever among our colleagues is answering the phone that you were the texter. We'd love to talk to you directly.
Here's
We'd love to talk
Vanessa from Rosendale. I can count on my fingers how many times I ever talked to my mom during the school day in all my years in school. Constant contact with your parents does not help you problem solve through life. Being able to call mom or dad at a drop of the hat if you forgot something or are mad at a teacher is stifling kids' ability to gain independence and navigate challenging situations.
By the way, we have an answer to the texter before. Jamie, our colleague, just spoke to the AG's office. Spokesperson said the ban that has been proposed by the AG and a few legislators would apply to cell phones, tablets, and other personal electronic devices that connect to the internet. So that would include Apple Watches, Samsung Watches, Google Watches, would exclude a Fitbit type thing that only tracks steps. So there's the answer to your question. 877-301-8970. Hey, for whoever's answering the phones back in Brighton, if there's somebody who hates this idea, can we take them out of order and hear what their perspective is? Deirdre, you're in Dorchester. You're on Boston Public Radio. Hey.
Hi there.
Hi.
I'm the parent of an almost 13-year-old and an almost 11-year-old, and I absolutely hate the idea of phones.
Good.
Okay.
How would your kids feel about it if they found out they couldn't take their phone? Or do you even allow your kids to take their phones to school?
Well, we have one phone that I call the family phone, and I will say that it's a constant source of angst for my kids. My older daughter has it most of the time. She does not have the password to it, but she can make a 911 call, and she can also answer a call. So it's not a perfect situation, but I do feel since she takes the MBTA to school that it is nice to have that ability to track her. But I don't think that kids need to be having these things constantly distracting them. I feel like TikTok and all these other programs are training their brains to only focus for 30 seconds at a time. I think they're incredibly harmful, and everything that anybody can do to keep kids away from phones is a good thing in my mind.
Every word, I agree with you. Deirdre, that was great. Thanks
Deirdre,
for the call.
They do say in all these stories, the younger you start with the phone, the worse it is. And
that's why Jonathan Haidt, again, with this,
Yeah.
whatever it's called, the anxious generation, is saying no social media, no phones till you're 16.
But again, the beauty of this is if nobody's got their phones during
I agree.
the day.
It's a great
and people
point.
are saying, there are clever kids that get around this. Apparently somebody was sewing the Yonder pouch open or something like that, or putting counterfeit phones in there. So they're always going to be the exception. But again, if you have 1 or 2 kids that do that, or even if you have 10 kids that do that, and nobody else is doing it, it kind of cuts down on. You're not going to get response to what you're doing because other people won't have their phones. Okay, if you take away the kids' phones, how will I?
No, this was a joke. It's a bad joke.
Oh, it's a bad
text.
joke.
It's not funny.
Okay.
So let's skip it. Catherine in Weston, you are next on Boston Public Radio. Hey there, Catherine. Welcome.
Hi, I am a longtime listener and first-time caller.
That is spectacular. Thank you.
So I totally agree with everything we are talking about, that kids need less time on phones. I was a parent that waited till my daughter was 13 years old before she got a phone. So she's now 15. She's a freshman in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday, I took her phone away from her because her room has been a mess, and I just wanted her to clean it up. And I'm like, listen, I'm taking the phone away until you get that room cleaned up.
Whoa.
And so she went to school without her phone. And I was a little nervous about sending her, like, oh, what if there's a shooting at the school? And then I sort of, like, okay, you're being ridiculous. Take her phone away. She'll go to school. She'll be fine. Well, wouldn't you know, the one day I took her phone away, yesterday there was a lockdown at Weston High School because of a threat of violence against a teacher and a bomb threat.
Okay, so Catherine, wait. Catherine, did you want your kid to call you during the lockdown to have a conversation with you?
No.
Okay,
but it was the feeling, yes. But I know it's a false sense of security, and I realize that. But I think more than anything, it made her very nervous.
Well, then I understand that. And then that's where schools will come in. Part of this legislation, the Study Act, has training, obviously some educationals for kids. And Catherine, let me go one step further. Not only, I love your honest answer saying, no, I don't want her to call me, even though there's the anxiety thing. If they are calling a parent or a guardian, they're not paying attention to the person who's trying to provide some safety to them. So thanks for being an honest parent. We really we appreciate it. Did you know about this thing in Weston yesterday? I hadn't heard about it.
I hadn't heard about it either, but I think there's a lot of these, unfortunately, these threats and lockdowns, and it's really very, very scary. But I think that the adults that are there, the teachers,
But Catherine made a good point, though. You got to.
Her daughter was afraid.
Anxious because it's a change, and so you got to work with the kids. The schools have to work with the kids to understand this is not only going to make them safer and allow them to pay attention to what they're doing, but be better for them.
Okay, let me just read this quick one before the break. He disagrees. Adam from New Hampshire. My kid is not perfect. I don't believe she's ever been so disrespectful as to use her phone in such a way that would be deemed problematic. That said, why do progressives always want to solve everything by laws? Sounds a little authoritarian. If my school issues this, I'm telling her not to comply, and I will put up such a stink it will make the news.
Make sure she doesn't get vaccinated either while you're at it. It's like a twofer.
Okay, we're talking about the Massachusetts Attorney General's proposal that would ban cell phone use in schools. Time to take a quick break, but we're going to be back with more of your calls and texts. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
A fragile ceasefire is holding between Hamas and Israel, and many people in Gaza are trying to get home, only to find home no longer exists.
Where are the houses? Where are the streets? Where is the trees? Where is the animals? Where is the people we love?
The challenges ahead as Gaza starts to pick up the pieces. That story next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And the Skating Club of Boston, presenting the ISU World Figure Skating Championships with over 300 athletes competing at TD Garden March 25th through 30th for the title of World Champion. Tickets at isuworlds2025.com. and Supermicro and NVIDIA, accelerating AI with a wide range of AI servers and the NVIDIA AI Enterprise software platform. Supermicro is committed to driving AI infrastructure breakthroughs with rack-scale innovations.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. We're live at the library. Thank you all. And streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Mayor Wu will join us on Zoom on Monday for Ask the Mayor. That's at noon. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about this bill brought forward by the Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, to ban the use of cell phones in Massachusetts public schools. By the way, it does some other stuff, but that's what we're focusing on. What do you make of it? Give us a call or a text at 877-301-8970. You know, our staff is so on top of breaking news. There's a third brand new New York Post study. Listen to this one. Smartphone use among older adults is linked to dustbuster-related memory loss and general confusion.
Everybody's giving me grief about my dustbuster. I got a new one for Christmas, so I'm all set.
Well,
Thank
I wasted $14 on a charger, but go ahead.
We have two good texts.
What are they?
Anonymous texter. Why not put a smart speaker in each classroom so if there is an incident, students can say, Alexa, call 911. And then Mike...
It's a horrible idea.
Why
do you want that? The kid's not in charge of the classroom.
Jim, it's kind of a little bit of a joke.
Oh, it
I
is?
think the guy was trying
okay,
to
then
make
it's a
little
great
bit of
idea.
joke.
Go ahead.
Here's Mike in Wilmington.
Yeah.
Regarding concerns about not having phones during a gun incident, how about the decrease in gun-related incidents due to more normal social behavior? I'm so glad Mike pointed that out because one of the, I'm not saying that people are going to go out and start obviously going out shooting because they have cell phones, but the big problem with cell phones, according to all these studies, is the anxiety, depression, the mental health problems, the bullying. It's all this stuff that goes on through your cell phone.
Right, social media in particular. By the way, Laura, I believe, is the anonymous texter who was kind enough. I asked her to call in, and I think this is her from Walpole. Is that you, Laura?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. We really appreciate you calling in. It's very good of you. Make your case again, if you don't mind, in case people weren't listening a few minutes ago.
Okay. My daughter's a senior in high school, in Walpole High School.
Yep.
And a few months ago, they had a swatting situation where they went into lockdown and they basically came in as if it was an active shooter situation. My daughter basically came home and told me that she was afraid for her life. She was able to text me during the situation, and I was able to text her back with what I was hearing from other parents. And I think in high school, if you want to say younger, like middle school or younger, getting rid of phones, that's completely fine. I agree with that. But in high school, they need to learn how to manage it themselves because next year when she's in college, she's going to have free reign.
Laura, how many kids in your daughter's class?
250.
No, I mean in the classroom where that particular day, roughly.
She was in the library.
Okay.
So I don't.
So let's assume there are 20 kids in or in a classroom, and every kid is doing what you and your kid are doing, as opposed to paying attention to what the teacher or the librarian is trying to get them to do. I mean, don't you see that as a problem?
No, because I'll tell you that the police came in screaming at them.
Screaming at whom?
To get under the table. The kids get under the table, get behind the desk. They were so scared that they were holding on to each other. I mean,
I understand totally.
You, like,
I get that totally.
Scared the wits out of us.
But how did your phone call, your texting with your daughter, advance the situation, make things better in your estimation?
Because I was able to communicate with other parents to say what is going on. Has anyone heard anything? So we were able to, go back to them and be like, we think it's a swatting situation. Just listen to what they have to say. And to be honest with you, if it was a real life situation, and I would like to have the ability to at least speak to her.
Yeah, Laura, I disagree with you, but I really appreciate your calling in. Thank you.
You said something though really significant, Laura. You said your kid's in high school, right? That's what you said.
Laura, you still...
your kid's in high school, you said, right?
Yes.
What, junior year, senior year?
Senior.
Yep.
Okay. You said you want her to learn how to manage things herself.
Yes.
So she's going to be at some place next year. Maybe she's going to college. Maybe she's going to go to a job. And she's not... You talked about managing it with her as her mother, but you want her to learn to manage things herself. So it's kind of contradictory. You know what I mean?
what I'm talking about is the actual phone usage, right? So during the school day, most classes they have to put the phone up in the front of the class, so they're not allowed to use it. I'll tell you, they get around it. They email us because they're on Chromebooks.
Yep.
So what are you going to do? Brand Chromebooks? They're going to be in college next year. They're going to have the phone 24/7. I would rather have them learn now and have somewhat of have some kind of boundaries than to just free reign next year.
We hear you. Again, I disagree, but I'm very glad you called, made your case. Laura, thanks. By the way, we've told the story before, but our colleague Azita, one of our favorite people, raised a very good issue. And she says, how else, she works with us at GBH, how else am I supposed to track my son's location if he doesn't have his cell phone with him? Now, let me tell the story quickly because it's one of my all-time favorites. Her son I'm going to get this 90% right. Her son, who's a wonderful kid, by the way, turned 16 a bunch of years ago. And she had a tracker on the phone, and the son knew it. It wasn't like she was surreptitiously tracking her kid. And he turned 16, and he drove to school on the day that he was first able to drive. He was really happy. So she texted him during the day, during lunch, and say, how's it going? And her son said, it's going great. I'm practicing driving in the parking lot at school. And he was really proud. They hung up, or whatever. They stopped texting each other. And she looked at the tracker. He was not in the parking lot of the school practicing driving. He was at the Capitol Grill in Burlington having lunch.
I know,
so
I love that.
there is some value to the kid having the school, and I'm sure it was a fine lunch. It was. Well, let's try to squeeze in Bernadette in her truck. Hi, Bernadette. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
Long time. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
I am a parent of kids who are now out of high school, college age, and just graduated. And so they were that generation who had phones, and it was silly, and they're not needed in school. I think they're dangerous in school, frankly. I also think that parents who don't like the idea are really working on their control freak, and they really need to let it go, because kids don't need to be talking or getting emails from their moms during school.
Hey, Bernadette, instead of Marjorie and me responding to a texter who disagrees, let me read you a text we just got anonymously, and you can respond to her. I'm a parent of a middle school girl. I do not, capital letters, approve of banning phones in schools, cell phones in schools. Teachers and administrators, slow down, you guys, need to learn how to exist in this new world, just like with AI, ChatGPT. If they can't teach kids, here's the key line, who may be distracted, that's on them. And now with the risk of ICE raids, we're going to talk to Callie about that at noon, I absolutely need to communicate with my kid and protect her and her friends' rights. What do you say to that anonymous parent, Bernadette?
Okay. I hear what she's saying. I also think that a lot of parents are very hard at work breaking down their kids' teachers and the local school district. And that, I think, if you talk to most teachers, they're going to say parents are the hardest part of their work day. I think that kids are not able emotionally and mentally when they're 12 or 13 or 14 or 15 to regulate themselves around the phone. I'm 58 and I have a hard time doing it.
Yeah, I'm a little older than that, and so do I. So I get it.
Right.
Hey.
Well, I just want to answer the ICE thing, because I've been giving this a lot of thought, because I have a lot of friends who I know are very scared.
Hey, Bernadette, we got to let you go, and I'm sorry. Your phone was great, and then all of a sudden it started breaking up. But thank you for that. Jamie says, I miss the days of standing in line at the payphone to call my parents to pick me up from high school. That's pretty good, actually.
Yeah, and I'm not sure the parent that's worried about ICE raids is going to be able to protect anybody on her phone back at her house.
Probably true.
But here's one last thing, Jim. We were talking about how I was at a Heather Cox Richardson, Eileen McNamara event at the Kennedy Library.
Yeah, November 6th.
Hundreds and hundreds of people, standing room only.
Few less than my crowd.
You were out at a place.
Endicott College was huge, packed.
I heard it was a couple of hundred people.
It was
We just got a text.
Yeah.
I was actually at Jim's event. Sorry, Marjorie. But I was on my cell phone the entire time. It was a snooze fest. Thank you very much.
Well, she was there, nevertheless. I didn't say it was not.
You couldn't get into my
Okay,
event,
we're
Jim.
done.
It was sold
Thank
out,
you.
standing room
Thank
only.
you.
That's the way it goes. What are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
Okay. Up next, we are going to get a real treat. On the day of her debut album release and special concert at Club Passim in Cambridge, we're going to hear some gorgeous music from the singer-songwriter Cat Wallace. She is next with her band. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Boston Youth Symphony Orchestras with music director Federico Cortese, presenting Verdi's Don Carlo Sunday, January 26th at Sanders Theater at Harvard University. Tickets at bysoweb.org. And Explo. From comedy to veterinary science, Explo's summer program helps middle schoolers find their spark. Day and overnight options at explo.org/summer. Priority deadline, February 15th. And Furniture Consignment Gallery, helping to power the circular economy for over 20 years. Now accepting high-end luxury furniture consignments in the greater Boston area. Learn more at FurnitureConsignment.com. It's the story of one of the most curious men in history. This two-part series from Ken Burns delves inside the mind of the 15th century polymath. Don't miss Leonardo da Vinci, tonight at 9 on GBH2.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Regan and Jim Browdy live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Mayor Wu will be zooming into the show on Monday at noon for Ask the Mayor. It's time for Live Music Friday. Today, Boston singer-songwriter Cat Wallace is celebrating the culmination of years of work with the release of her excellent debut album we were listening today, Grand Design. It's out now on streaming services. She'll be at the fabulous Club Passim for a special album release show tonight, though I'm told it's sold out. Is that true? Well, get in line. If you go to Cat, as in K-A-T, WallaceMusic.com, you can find links to listen to Grand Design, updates on future shows. We'll talk to her in a minute, but first, here she is with members of her band performing the song Matter of Time. Welcome.
It's happened all at once and not at all. For time is a circle that's moving at a crawl, and it's only a matter of time. Yeah, it's only a matter of time before the well runs dry and the candlelight dies. Yeah, it's only a matter of time. Flying cars, child labor on Mars. Yeah, it's only a matter of time.
Great.
That was-
Kat's going to join us.
Yes, she is. Kat's going to join us, and they're going to be at Club Passim in Cambridge tonight. It's sold out, but for more info, go to passim.org or catwallacemusic.com. That was absolutely gorgeous. So introduce your band members for us.
We have on fiddle and vocals Jackie Armbruster.
Hey there. Welcome.
We have upright bass and vibes, just general good vibe, is Andrew Ryan.
Hey.
And we have over there, tickling the guitar strings in the best way possible, Stephen Manwaring.
So how excited are you? This is your first CD coming out today.
Yeah, so I've been on a few different things. I play fiddle primarily, but this is my own thing, debut album of songs. Yeah.
And are you nervous about it? What kind of reception you're going to know? We listened to most of it this morning.
Yeah,
It's fabulous.
gorgeous. Thank you.
But are you anxious or no?
Anxious in an excited way.
That's
yeah.
great.
Yeah.
So I read where you walk around the neighborhood with your notebook, and this is how you get your ideas,
Yeah.
scribbling away.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
There's actually a brilliant book called The Milkman, and it follows this Irish woman during the Troubles, and she's called Beyond the Pale, which is a term I hadn't realized, but it's very common in Ireland to say that you're a little nuts. And she goes around her neighborhood writing and reading books, and I was like, oh, I guess I'm beyond the pale. But it's a good creative outlet for me just to walk and write and kind of think my way through life that way.
You know what's perfect about you being here, it's not just you, is the fact that you're Club Passim. We spent yesterday afternoon on a segment where we got a huge amount of feedback about how Harvard Square ain't what it used to be, and the deterioration. Gerald Chan has shut down the theater there. The guy owns almost all of Harvard Square. Club Passim is, you're a young woman. I mean, what is Club, no, I'm serious. I mean, Club Passim has been there forever. Our great friend Tom Rush played there when he was at Harvard, when it was called Club 47.
Brilliant, yeah.
What's that mean for you to be playing at Club Passim?
It's totally surreal. I mean, I work there. I run sound there.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
You have a lot of jobs going on,
I
is what I
have
understand.
so many jobs, yes. I also work at the Harvard Kennedy School. So I'm in Cambridge. I'm in Harvard Square all the time. And Club Passim is such a gift to our community. I played the staff show there last night.
Oh, great.
Everyone who works there is also an incredible musician.
I know that.
Naomi Westwater, who I believe is part of their folk collective. I believe she's been on the show.
She has.
She had a brilliant interview here.
Brilliant.
Trying to hold up to
That's what she's going to
Naomi.
be saying about you in a couple of days. Go ahead.
But it's like totally surreal to be playing the same stage as Joan Baez and
Yeah.
Bob Dylan, and they became a nonprofit arts organization in 1994. But before that, we're just a regular folk music club, and now they have a school of music, and
that's great.
the community is just so strong. And I was talking with the rest of my band last night about how I don't think that happens in a lot of other cities, and I can't really imagine myself anywhere else.
You know what's great about Aiden, our colleague, spoke to you before you were here, and one of the things that really made me feel good, we have a lot of young musicians on Fridays, and I would say, 50% of them, as much as they love what they're doing, say,
They gotta
Boston's
go to
just
New
not the
York.
place for me.
Yeah.
I got to go to New York, I got to go to LA. You are a praiser of the Boston music scene.
Yeah.
Flesh it out a little bit. Why?
Well, I play Celtic music too, so it's kind of a no-brainer. I feel like, and this is a hot take, but I've been to a lot of sessions in Ireland recently. I got engaged in Dingle, Ireland,
goodness.
this past year.
Congratulations.
What a magical place that is.
Oh my God. Unfortunately, the Dolphin's not there anymore, but that was a big factor for years. But I feel like the session scene in Boston is just so strong. We have the Druid, we have Emmett's, and anywhere you want to go that has a good pint of Guinness also has.
We have the Baron and all their new places
exactly.
in North Cambridge. Tommy McCarthy was here a couple of weeks ago with his family, that sort of thing.
And you had
That's
all my
great.
friends here for our BCM Fest.
We did,
last
as
weekend.
a matter of fact, yeah.
So why, as a young woman, are you obsessed with time?
I can remember as early as 5 years old asking my dad every 5 minutes what the time was. So I'm not quite sure, but I think really what it is that your perception of time changes depending on what you're doing.
Yeah.
And also your age, and I think music is where I feel most comfortable in time because that is the medium in which the art is happening. And so I feel like maybe that's why I explore those themes in my lyrical kind of view as well. But
So what are you going to play for us now?
I'm going to play Grand Design, which is the title track of the record, and I have a brilliant songstress, Kaya Cater, singing with me on the track as well, on the recorded version, and Jackie's going to do an amazing job.
That was the
doing
last
that
song
too.
you wrote for this CD?
Yeah,
Was that what I read?
yeah, that's right.
How'd
yeah.
that come about? Quickly, if you can.
I was walking from Somerville to
That's
Cambridge.
With her notebook.
Of course you were.
Okay.
Okay,
All
you
right.
want to gently put your headset down and join your bandmates, and
Yep.
we'll get to you in about
Let's-
30 seconds.
You
Thank
just
you,
heard the
Kat.
voice
We
of Kat
appreciate
Wallace.
it.
We're going to hear performing in just a second. She's got her new album out today called Grand Design, and she's going to celebrate by performing with a full band tonight at Club Passim. It's sold out, as I said before, but you can get more info at passim.org or catwallacemusic.com.
And by the way, you should patronize Club Passim all the time.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a
it's
great
just
place.
it is a wonderful outpost. It's a great thing. Kat Wallace and her bandmates. Here she is playing Grand Design.
I don't know why I didn't cry the day you said goodbye. Maybe I'm stronger than you could know. I loved you when I was a child. The setting sun looks well on me now. I used to be terrified of the countless stars and the vastness they hold. I must not matter at all, and I still see every day in a crowd at a show, but it's only a ghost that reminds me of you in some way. And I don't think that I'm losing my mind, but I'm stuck staring in the rear view, collecting the pieces of you. The tide comes in to carry away all of the bad in the sand. I sift through the dirt, looking for gold. The crashing wave takes its toll, and time creeps over like a thief, stealing the way things had been. But the body keeps score when the heart moves on. I wish you were holding my hand, and I still see you every day in the grocery store. In a stranger's smile that reminds me of you in some way. hear about you from a friend of a friend, a stitch in my grand design.
Songwriter Kat
Thanks so
Wallace.
much.
Her debut album is out tonight. It's called Grand Design. She's celebrating with an album release show with her full band at Club Passim. It's sold out, but Club Passim will be live streaming Kat's show thanks to Texter Steve. Thank you, Steve. You go to www.passim.org/stream, PASSIM. Kat Wallace, thank you
Thanks, that was
very,
great,
very,
all of you. Thank
very
you so
much.
much.
And by the way, Kat's website is Kat.
Yeah, more smart conversation about community issues is up ahead with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio. Right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, the Oscar nominations are out with Emilia Perez, The Brutalist, and Wicked leading the pack. Plus, Prince Harry claims a monumental legal win over Murdoch newspapers, which includes a long, sought-after apology and an 8-figure sum. And President Trump signs an executive order mandating classical architecture for all federal buildings. Will D.C. now look like ancient Rome? We'll take on these headlines and more on our Arts and Culture Week in Review today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News, what matters to you?
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. Vice President Vance is scheduled to address the annual March for Life today in Washington. As NPR's Sarah McCammon reports, this year's gathering of anti-abortion activists comes at a time when conservatives control the White House, Congress, and they hold a majority on the Supreme Court.
President Trump has bragged about his role in choosing Supreme Court justices who voted to overturn Roe v. Wade. But since then, he's offered mixed messages about whether he'd support new federal restrictions, as some activists are calling for. Trump's vice president, J.D. Vance, is set to address the march in person, his first public appearance since the inauguration. Here's Vance at the Ohio March for Life in 2023.
For the millions of babies as yet unborn in this country, we are going to fight for you every step of the way. There are many steps to take it. I'll be right there walking with you.
House Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune are also scheduled to speak. Sarah McCammon, NPR News, Washington.
President Trump is capping off his first week in office with visits to areas devastated by natural disasters. He's in Asheville, North Carolina now to view damage from the remnants of Hurricane Helene that wiped out scores of homes and left at least 266 people dead. He says he will sign an executive order to reform, overhaul, or get rid of FEMA without providing details. Later, he heads to California to survey damage from the ongoing wildfires. While in North Carolina, he said he would support aid for California if they backed a voter ID law and reformed their environmental laws. And the Trump administration has nixed DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion programs across the federal government, including the military. NPR's Tom Bowman has more.
These programs have been seen as pretty effective in bringing more women and minorities into the ranks at all levels. President Biden chose the first woman, Admiral Lisa Franchetti, to run the Navy, as well as the first black defense secretary, Lloyd Austin. But Donald Trump and his defense secretary nominee, Pete Hegseth, have dismissed these programs as woke and divisive. Another thing they question is extremist activity.
NPR's Tom Bowman. Israel's Supreme Court has again postponed a decision on whether or not to allow journalists access to Gaza. NPR's Kat Lonsdorf has more.
Israel's Foreign Press Association, of which NPR is a member, filed the latest petition to lift the ban on outside media last September. The court gave the state of Israel a deadline to respond to that petition. The state has requested that deadline to be moved back 5 times. It's now set for early February. Early in the war, the Supreme Court rejected another petition from the FPA, citing security concerns. Outside journalists have only been allowed access to Gaza during the war on highly controlled embeds with the Israeli military. Throughout the war, reporting from Gaza has largely come from Palestinian journalists who were already inside when the war began. Kat Lonsdorf, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The T is shutting down part of the Red Line this weekend. As GBH's Jeremy Siegel reports, crews will be updating the line's signal system.
The T is changing the system, which tells trains where and when to go from analog to digital. Officials say that will reduce cost, ease congestion, and lead to more frequent service. Shuttle buses will replace subway trains during this weekend's partial shutdown between JFK, UMass, and Braintree. This is the first of 3 weekend closures along that stretch. The second will be the weekend of February 8th, and the third will be the weekend of February 22nd. Jeremy Siegel, GBH News 89.7.
Embattled Boston City Councilor Tania Fernandez-Anderson won't have to appear in federal court until March. Fernandez-Anderson was due in court next Wednesday for the first time since her arrest and arraignment on public corruption charges last month. However, court records show that a request by both sides was granted by the judge, and the status conference hearing has now been moved to March 5th. In sports, the Bruins and Celtics are off until tomorrow. The finals are set for the Australian Open. On the women's side, it's Madison Keys versus Arina Sabalenka. And on the men's side, it's Jannik Sinner versus Alexander Zverev. That's a great matchup, both of them. In sports, mostly sunny and dry for the next 3 days. Low 30s today, low 30s tomorrow, 40 on Sunday. And we are at 28 degrees in Boston right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from BetterHelp, committed to supporting mental health through therapy and helping clients find balance. Clients are matched with one of 35,000 therapists for online therapy from anywhere at betterhelp.com/public.
Mr. Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. Thank you. Broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. On Monday, we'll be in our Brighton studio, but Mayor Wu is going to zoom in at noon for another edition of Ask the Mayor, taking our questions and yours via text and phone. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. We're joined at the BPL desk by Callie Crossley. Callie is host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, which you can catch Sunday nights right here at 89.7 at 6. You also hear Callie commentaries Mondays for GBH's Morning Edition, and she's also co-host for GBH's The Culture Show, which airs daily at 2 right here in 89.7, including today's Week in Review, which is live from the BPL studio. Callie, good to see you. Hi.
Hello.
Hey there.
Hello, Callie Crossley. So we're not even a week into the Donald Trump presidency, but it's clear he's brought out the long guns to basically open war on diversity programs in colleges and private businesses and in the federal government. What do you make of it?
Well, the first thing I have to say is I'm infuriated about many things, but particularly his use of the word merit over and over again, which is a code word for white. And if you're not that, and you're not, in his family, then obviously you're not qualified to do anything.
You mean you would say that maybe Pete Hegseth is not necessarily a meritorious kid?
Well, he thinks he is, and that's fine for him, but to cast aspersions, as has been cast for long years on everybody that manages to get an opportunity to break into some of these circles, because it's really about an opportunity or lack thereof. That's what the diversity, equity, and inclusion programs were all about. Not about taking up space from anybody else, but to broaden the space. Not about taking away the pie, but allowing everybody to have a piece of the pie. That's all it is. And to suggest that people that finally got a piece of the pie somehow are not qualified or equipped to tackle the jobs, of course, is a lie. And all one has to do is look around and see the people doing the jobs once they got the opportunity. But it's infuriating because every time he says it, of course, people are like, yeah, that's right. They're letting these people in. They didn't know what they were doing. It's just not the case. It has never been the case. And that wasn't ever the point.
One of the things that is really, I'm not defending it, but if you get a ton of federal funds, obviously you have concern because Trump does have control over that. I'd like to see, and I know Marjorie agrees with this, people like the guy who's president of Wesley and the woman from Mount Holyoke.
Yes.
Who have actually, they're getting federal money. They're standing up and on principle.
They're not backing down.
But you know what's even, so that's a tougher situation. The private sector, where you're getting no money. Here's the headline in the Globe story. Katie Johnson and Shirley, our colleague Shirley Leung. Trump's federal DEI rollbacks also take aim at private employers. The executive order says private sector must combat illegal private sector DEI preferences. He doesn't have any power over them directly. They're also cowering already. Healy had a great line yesterday. It's in the Globe, Associated Industries meeting. There's an attempt to bully and scare people. It's Governor Healy, obviously. It's pretty blatant what's happening out there. Just stay strong, do what's right, do what works. And we know these programs work. And the incredible thing, Marjorie has been right every day she said this. If you're an individual company or an individual university and you're too nervous to stand up by yourself, which I understand, then call your fellow CEO, call your fellow university president, and have 11 of you stand up and say, we're not going to take this crap. We believe in the policies we've implemented, and we're not just going to drop them because we're scared of Donald Trump. Is that unrealistic?
It perhaps is, but I just want to make the point, and you can go and look at my past segment on this. I did a segment about quote-unquote DEI retrenchment in June with the person who's head of a summit. This will be the 4th year for it, of chief diversity officers in the private sector. And she said that's not happening. In fact, a lot of companies anticipating, the win said, this is business for us. This is now bottom line business. There is chapter and verse studies that show if you follow the policies, not what somebody says they are, of diversity, equity, and inclusion, it increases your bottom line. Now, why? Why? Because the studies have shown when you have more perspectives, you come to better solutions. And these companies like money. So they're about the business of trying to increase the possibility of getting more money. 2, we are in a global marketplace. We can put America first 24 hours a day. But the bottom line is we cannot operate by ourselves. All of these companies are globally connected. They have to work with everybody in the world. Guess what? When you have a diverse and equitable and inclusive environment in a private sector, it works for you for more money and for your better relationships around the world, which is back to more money. I'm not saying these people are altruistic. I'm saying there is a bottom line factor here that's working for them. So my point is there are companies that have said, we hear you, we hear what's happening out here. Yep. We're continuing on the path that we've been on because we've seen the results.
But look at Costco. Costco is sticking their neck out, and now they got these shareholders in an uproar saying, we don't want this. We don't want you to be sticking your neck out. And they have to hope that they can
I think that's going to be the case.
Shareholders.
Right. At every one of these private companies that have shareholders, they're going to have to demonstrate the case, which is easy to do. Let me show you your dividends. This is really what it comes down to. And for those that are continuing forward, maybe a coalition of some sort will work. But I would suggest, and having been told by the people I interviewed in June, there are a lot of people that are just not saying anything. They're just going on about their business, doing what they had been doing before.
Well, I would say silence is complicity in this environment, because I can't name one company other than Costco. And if I was able on the show to name 15 or 20 companies that are doing exactly what your guest said they were doing, I think people would feel a hell of a lot stronger than they feel,
Well, sad for me that I didn't look up and, get some of those names. But there are. But my point is that, no, of course, if people want to be vocal about it, and should be, that'd be great. But I believe you spent, 15 minutes yesterday talking about Bishop Buddy and standing alone?
She's getting death threats.
She's getting death threats. That's great.
Can we talk about one place that I really think has disgraced itself repeatedly? Is we talked ad nauseum to Khalil Gibran Muhammad, formerly, he's still part-time at Harvard, now he's at Princeton, about the retrenchment at Harvard after Elise Stefanik and Virginia Fox on the House Education Committee went after Gay and Harvard, and went after Khalil's class, by the way, by name. Remember neutrality a couple of months ago on things that are not our core values, which means anything that's going to upset Donald Trump, we're going to be neutral on. Last week they hire, and I guess this makes some business sense, a lobbying firm in Washington that has Trump connections. You told me Susie Wiles?
Yeah,
Chief
not
of
only
Staff used
Susie
to be there?
Wiles, it's called
Pam
Ballard
Bondi.
Partners. And Susie Wiles and, you're right, yeah, Pam Bondi both used to work there. So there you go.
That didn't put me
Susie
over...
Wiles is the chief of staff for Trump.
Yeah. The thing that put me over the edge was a story in the Crimson and the Harvard Crimson and the Globe today about them essentially outsourcing their Harvard slavery program.
Yes.
And while neither story said this, I was curious to know. I asked Marjorie her opinion. I'll ask you now. While the stories don't say this, they got rid of all the staff. They're outsourcing this thing. They have Henry Louis Gates saying it's fine. The outside organization is great. It is so clear to me this is part of, we're not supposed to talk about slavery here. We can't shut down the $100 million program from President Bacow. So what we'll do is we'll tell people in Washington we outsourced it. So it's sort of less ours than before. Am I being unfair to them?
No, you're not being unfair, but it's not less hours than not. They got rid of the staff. So it's all of the work now is done by outside. So there's no, and that was a very important task they were undergoing about identifying some of the direct descendants. It's history. And we're back to, we've talked about this here, about the effort to stamp out what is history. We know that it happened, the details of which was happening with that project of identifying folks that were connected, how the university was connected. And this is not just at Harvard, this is at other places as well. And so it's really, at a place that is known for its research. Look, Widener Library is one of the outstanding research libraries in the world.
Well, the Harvard thing, because they've got this massive endowment. Yeah. They've got more money than God, practically. Why they don't have the you-know-whats to stand up? I mean, I understand it if you're a struggling college and you have to worry. But they're loaded. I mean, why can't they do what Mount Holyoke is doing with the principal there? And by the way, the Harvard Crimson reported that the employees found out they were going to get canned at 11 o'clock. Yeah. They were going to be fired effective immediately. So that's great, too.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously they have the right to do whatever they want to do. That's beyond tacky and pointed in many ways. But I think the point is that one of the points that should not be overlooked is that, yes, they are very, very well endowed. But remember, a lot of people withdrew their support. A lot of very wealthy donors withdrew their support. Now, you can argue, was that a drop in the bucket, quote unquote, for other places or not? But that was concerning. I'm not suggesting that was the thing to do. I am pointing out that was a reality as well.
Yeah, I have to say, though, the flip side, I know with which you'd agree, this slavery project was probably the most praised act of Harvard University in the larger world that believes in equity and diversity than anything they've done in decades. And to outsource this and can the staff is just unimaginably cowardly to me.
I just have to say, I'm at a loss as to why it's offensive to actually, note the history. I mean, obviously it's offensive to some people who don't want to talk about the history.
Yeah, including the President of the United States.
Right, but I'm just saying, in general, for people who want to know what the data is, how is this offensive?
I'm with you. Yeah. Talking to Callie Crossley.
Well, it just looks like it's a big effort now to crack down on people of color, the history of the true history.
Looks like is.
It is.
Yeah.
And to send fear and panic throughout the community. There was a very upsetting story today in the Globe about people shaking in their boots in East Boston, which is a heavily Latino community. They were talking to this barber that works there. He says everyone is in a panic. We also have a story about Fox News embedding themselves with federal agents when they did these immigrant raids. And when you read the story, according to the Boston.com and the Globe, they went after criminals. So I don't think people are too upset that they went after criminals or members of that notorious MS-13 gang. But as the Globe pointed out, people that came here across the border, a civil infraction, they're not criminals, are hysterical.
Right. Well, a couple of things. First, we were talking in our editorial meeting today, and it just got clarity from one of our reporters, Sarah Betancourt, that a raid like that does not happen overnight. So that's been planned for a while. To your point, these are folks with some long, with some records.
Yeah,
some records. Okay, so they need to be attended to. what we're talking about here is the chilling effect and people responding to it because they don't know what criminal now, how criminal is defined. I'm using air quotes. And there are many people who say criminal is defined as you are undocumented, therefore you are a criminal. That's a wide swath of folks. And when you say mass deportations, that doesn't mean a couple of hundred, right? So that would seem to fall into that category. One of the things that goes across both the stories that we just talked about, the potential retrenchment in corporate and other places and universities, and now these raids, is the spying aspect.
Yes.
A part of all of this is asking people working in these companies, working at the universities, folks who are just living in their communities, to spy and report back to authorities and, let them know if they believe somebody has violated it. This, to me, is so akin to Hollywood blacklist and everything else.
I think we should call those people collaborators, like they called back in World War II. You were collaborating because it doesn't end well.
Well, no. I mean, I just, you go back to think about Germany during that time.
Exactly.
Where they're naming people and pointing people out. I mean, just that level of fear and is so, it's just hard to get your psychic mind around.
Well, fear is the thing. I mean, once again, Bishop Buddy, when she talked about fear and the notion that the fear, it seems to me, like particularly in the schools, there's a really good piece about how the Worcester school system is really second largest in the state, is really getting its act together with its kids to prepare them, to let the teachers know how they're going to cooperate or not, or that sort of thing. You can be a white kid who's spent your whole life here, when the kid sitting next to you, who's your best friend, was a kid who, by the way, may be a citizen, but maybe a Latino American, or maybe isn't a citizen, is an undocumented kid, maybe a dreamer, whatever, you're going to be scared and fearful too. And I don't want to be unfair because Mayor Wu will be with us on Monday and we'll get to ask her directly. The Boston school superintendent spoke to the school committee on January 2nd, 22nd, I guess to prepare or explain the preparation. I don't quite get where the preparation is in this. That may be unfair too, you'll tell me. Here's Mary Skipper at the school committee a few days ago, 2 days ago. Here she is.
Our number one priority is to ensure that all BPS students, regardless of actual or perceived immigration status, are safe and accepted in our school communities. In these uncertain times, we will continue to adhere to our core principles and safeguard students' rights. We will remain staunchly committed to standing firm on our values while following the law. And we'll continue to do everything in the district's lawful power to protect students and families' constitutional and legal rights.
Could you explain to me what that means? What are they doing?
What that means is we're not quite sure what we're doing.
Exactly.
That's exactly what
I would also
thought.
say that's a response to the new part of one of his executive orders, which says we will go into, quote, sensitive areas like schools and hospitals, which were before off limits, or at least not considered areas where that would not, those kinds of raids would not take place. So I think they're trying to figure out, well, what do we do and how do we handle it? And to your point, I want to just make another point. How many times have we heard where there have been mistakes? This is what scares me more as well. There are mistakes.
Yeah.
They don't have all the stuff together, and they make mistakes, and they've grabbed the wrong people. And to your larger point, they've traumatized everybody. And here we are. I'm just living in fear that that's going to happen more and more, because as you ramp this thing up, particularly if there's been a push inside the administration to let's make sure that we have some evidence in hand, some actual going in and grabbing people so that we can prove we mean business, which I would assume by way of the executive orders and the tone of them, that that's what they mean. It's pretty scary.
Kudos to Worcester. They had an extensive story in the Globe about exactly what they're going to do, what you have to do to even get inside the school. And I don't know why they can't get their act together, at least as far as we know in Boston. But certainly they should to say exactly what the procedure is as they've laid out.
By the way, and they may, in all fairness, that's all we have is from 2 days. They may, and we'll find out from Mayor Wu at noon on Monday if there's a concrete plan that can provide some assurance for
And
parents
they may have a
kids
plan
in
they
schools.
don't wish to divulge.
We'll see on Monday.
Yeah.
So, Callie Crossley, what about this person, this Peltier guy? I've lost the story with his first
Yes.
name. He was
an indigenous activist.
Yes, he would.
Leonard Peltier.
Yes, tell us the story.
Well, he's been sort of a cause célèbre for years and years and years since the Battle of Wounded Knee, which he was involved in. There were people who were killed at law enforcement officers who were killed. That was 1973, and he was present during that time, accused and linked to those killings, and has been jailed forever. And there have been people on all along, both activists from Native American communities and others, saying this was a political imprisonment.
Yeah.
Because
Coretta Scott King.
Yes.
Desmond Tutu.
Yeah.
Robert Redford.
Yeah.
The actor, too.
So-
Pete Seeger.
Right. So this has been going on for years and years and years. There have been asks for clemency, for pardons, for everything. Never got it. Christopher Wray, as you know, was the last FBI director who resigned. He asked Biden not to pardon him, said he didn't think he was remorseful or whatever. Biden obviously decided to listen to some other people and did give him pardon. He's 81 years old now, not in good health. But I think the big issue is that there's always been some discussion about whether or not his arrest was politically motivated as opposed to criminally motivated, if you know what I mean.
And he's maintained his innocence.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
And by the way, it was a commutation, so he doesn't.
That's right.
It's not wiped clear from his record. He served, I think, 50 years in jail, literally, for the conviction of killing these FBI agents.
So, how are you doing in the first week here? How are you coping? Are you trying not to read too much about it, or what are you doing?
Well, I mean, I go back and forth about the merit thing. That's just driving me insane. For me, I have read so much stuff from, or tried to read a lot of stuff from people who are really locked-in supporters of the president. Because I really want to understand, is this what you wanted? Like, I don't know. It's unclear to me as I read and listen that these kinds of events that are happening now, that the specificity of the spying and the this and the that, is that what people want? Now, clearly, some people did, but I'm talking about the majority of people. And I'm just, it's you can look around and see all the ironies. Here he is at the inauguration, making a pause in his speech to talk about how appreciative he is of Black folks and Latino folks for voting for him in a room full of white people. With a minister that he loves and loves him, ripping off Martin Luther King Jr., and no one in the room knows it.
Oh, that's a great
They're all clapping and thinking this guy is the greatest speaker they've ever heard. And I'm screaming at the TV, yes, of course he is, because it's a 50-year-old speech that was done by Martin Luther King.
Remember when Melania ripped off Michelle Obama? That was a great moment, too.
So what is, so I just keep thinking, is this really what you wanted?
I think the answer is, for the most part, it is.
Maybe,
we should,
I guess.
An anonymous texter just said the superintendent in Boston just sent a much more detailed email to families, so apparently they have...
Can we try to get that before, too? If we
try
can,
to
we'll
get
read some
information. What's
excerpts.
on the show?
On the...
Your show.
My show. My show. Great show this Sunday. We are talking to two Grammy nominees. They are already Grammy winners from past years. And we're highlighting Berkeley's influence. Berkeley has over 300 Grammy winners in their history. And so two of them are Esperanza Spalding.
Oh, great.
She's up for Best Jazz Vocal Artist. But we also like to highlight somebody that you wouldn't know. So the other person is Jut Galindo, and she is a mastering engineer, and she's a vinyl cutter, and she's up for 7 nominations. One of them is for Billie Eilish's Hit Me Hard and Soft. But, it's just a great conversation with the two of them, and you see the talent that comes, and they're able to articulate so well how Berkeley helped them and influenced them in their musicianship. And the second part of it is a really interesting piece from a book by a scholar, Hannah Poland Gilai, and she's talking about how Yiddish fundamentally changed after the internment, that words were created inside the internment during the Holocaust, and they were somehow described as trash Yiddish, and that people who came out of the Holocaust can speak some of it, but others can't. But it's interesting what gets passed. It's really fascinating. So that's, of course, ahead of International Holocaust Remembrance Day on Monday.
Fabulous.
Thank you, Callie.
And we'll see you at 2 o'clock right here.
Right here.
Can someone highlight this for us and give us a sense? We have the skipper statement. We'll give it to you later. Callie Crossley, thank you.
We've been speaking with GBH's Callie Crossley, host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, Sundays, 89.7 at 6 o'clock. You can also hear Callie's commentaries on Mondays for GBH's Morning Edition, and she's co-host of GBH's Culture Show, which airs daily at 2, and it's going to be here, right after we're done for their weekend review. They're going to be at the Boston Public Library. After a quick break, we're going to speak with retired federal judge Nancy Gertner on the legality of Trump's many executive orders and other issues. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
In 2022 at a rave in Prague, a new feeling washed over FKA Twigs.
It's pure presence. It's a moment of nothingness, this egoless presence filled with tingling clarity.
She called the feeling Eusexua, which is also the name of her new album. I'm Juana Summers. We'll sit down with FKA Twigs on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and the Massachusetts Teachers Association, working together to ensure that all students have the resources they need to succeed. The MTA, 180 years of commitment to the public schools and colleges our communities deserve. massteacher.org. And Cambridge Savings Bank. CSB is committed to improving the financial well-being of local small businesses through financial education and banking services. Learn more at cambridgesavings.com. Member FDIC.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Mayor Wu's with us at noon for Ask the Mayor. She'll zoom in on Monday. And we already have gotten a copy of the email that an anonymous texter said Mary Skipper, the superintendent in Boston, sent out, and it is much more detailed.
Good.
Just give you a couple of quick examples. Boston cannot require ask students or caregivers for information regarding immigration status. BPS, Boston Public Schools, cannot recognize administrative warrants, detainers, or other documents issued by an agency enforcing civil immigration law. And the point they go on at some point, obviously if they have a criminal warrant, it's a different deal. But Skipper has done exactly what we were concerned she had not done, is filled in some blanks for nervous parents, and I hope parents then address their kids. We're joined now at the library for another edition of On the Docket by retired federal judge Nancy Gertner, senior lecturer at Harvard Law School and a BPR contributor. Hello, Judge Gertner.
Hello.
Nice to see
Hello,
you.
Judge Gertner. Thank you for coming in. So many questions about what President Trump has done this week, but there's been a flurry of executive orders. Some of them seem like they're really out there testing the constitutional limits and stuff. What do you make of this rat-a-tat-tat of executive orders?
I have two feelings about it. One is those people who have studied Orban in Hungary say this is what he did.
Really?
You flood the zone so that the public does not really understand what's going on. You focus on one or two things, but you don't look at the whole picture. I don't know whether I'm prepared to go there, but certainly some of it is really just I'm going to take over government. I'm going to suspend grants. I'm going to suspend all programs until I put my imprint on things. Put the burden on people who are challenging it to challenge everything, and certainly something will slip through. That's what I think. Many of them are really what one president might do in a new administration. Many of them are simply pulling the plug on anything that Biden touched, and it's preposterous. It's preposterous. We hear of grants being canceled, people mid-research can't finish their research just because he wanted to take control of everything.
Refugees who had plane reservations stranded.
From Afghanistan, people that helped our military during that war, stranded.
So, I mean, one view, and this is a political judgment and not a legal one, is that he simply wanted to stop everything and then we'll figure out what he wants to do. That's one view. The other view is he wants to stop everything and basically distract us from what he's actually doing. I don't know, but this is certainly extraordinary.
You know, nobody knows him better in the press than Maggie Haberman from the New York Times, and she said, a la what you just said, before his inauguration, sometime last week on CNN, and I'm sure she said it in the Times, flood the zone is his deal. You throw out a million things, people get distracted by the one, distracted is a poor choice of words, focused on the thing they care most about or fear the most, and something else slips by. Now, on the birthright thing, I assume you'd agree with the lower federal court judge who said it was blatantly unconstitutional to try to do away with birthright citizenship. So that was, and you're nodding, so I assume you do agree.
You can't nod on radio?
What?
You can't nod on radio?
You can nod. No one will know what you're doing. Well, actually, if they're watching, they will know what you're doing. Nod a little louder, can you, next time? Thank you. A couple of things that I don't understand, just to pick a couple of examples. Marjorie asked me this question the other day, and I boldly answered as if I knew what I was talking about, and I didn't. The TikTok ban, which, you know, not the most serious thing. I know it is to some people, particularly those who depend upon it for income. Congress passed the ban. The President of the United States, Biden, signed it. And he now has a 75-day pause. And as a result, saying we're not going to enforce the law, and as a result, TikTok is back up. What power does a president have to undo by saying I'm not going to enforce it a law that was duly passed and signed by the president, whether you like it or not?
He has the power to direct his Department of Justice as to what to enforce. So, for example, they could put the TikTok enforcement on the bottom of the pile after a million other things. In other words, he can sort of play around with the enforcement power. He can't do it permanently, but he could play around with the enforcement power. It would then be incumbent on people to go into court and say this is essentially, more than just playing around with the enforcement power. This is actually stopping the ban for a meaningful amount of time. But that wouldn't be easy because it's time limited. So he has some wiggle room there. I mean, if he certainly said, I'm not going to enforce it ever, then that would essentially be undoing what Congress said. I'm not going to enforce it for 60, 75 days.
He can get away with it.
He can get away with it.
Okay, another thing. Kash Patel, if he is confirmed as the head of the FBI, has a hit list and seems to have promised to act in accord, even though I'm sure he won't say it at his hearing, of what Donald Trump wants, to get exact retribution on his political enemies. We know Joe Biden has pardoned a number of them. We'll talk to you about the pardons. He wrote a great piece on Contrarian, which is a great new publication. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I guess my question is, let's assume they go after Jack Smith, for example, who was not pardoned, and they go after another witness, Cassidy Hutchinson, who did testify, who wasn't pardoned, the 20-something who was brilliant and courageous, who was the chief of staff, I think, to Mark Meadows, who was the chief of staff to the president.
Did you mention why Mike Johnson didn't want to bring her in for an interview?
Yeah, well, why don't you say that? It's pretty good.
Because she's a very attractive young woman, and apparently she was getting a lot of sex texts from members of that
Congress after she testified at the January 6th
So he didn't want
committee.
those sex texts to come to light.
But here's my question, which I'm not asking artfully. Does each of, if they go after individuals who have been, quote, political enemies of Donald Trump, the FBI, the Justice Department, do each of them have to be dealt with one by one? Jack Smith has to defend himself. Cassidy Hutchinson, as opposed to, is there a challenge, a broader challenge that could be filed by the likes of you that says this is just political retribution, violative of the something? You're nodding no on that one.
It would be very difficult to do because they would have, first of all, would have to be alleging more than just you're on my enemies list. They'd have to be alleging you did a crime.
Of course.
And then each of them are in different positions. Smith and all the prosecutors on the enemies list have actually very robust prosecutorial immunity. But that means the prosecution begins, you go before a judge and you say, I'm immune, and then a judge would have to rule on that. Cassidy Hutchinson is in a different category. There's immunity for legislators, which is under the speech and debate clause of the Constitution. She's in a different situation. They have to allege a crime. Here's what I know is going on across the country. There are pro bono lawyers lined up to represent anyone on that list or anyone wrongly accused.
Yeah, but wait, just 1 second on this. You keep talking about the same thing that Nancy Gertner just did about raising money and that sort of stuff, pro bono lawyers. As someone who defended a lot of people who were not guilty of what they were charged with, it's not just raising money to pay your lawyer. The dislocation and agony in your life when you're charged with a crime, particularly if you didn't commit it, is immense, right? I mean,
but it's very difficult to stop that. You're talking about, I will file a class action for everyone in Appendix B of Kash Patel's book.
Yes, that's what I'm asking.
Right. That's very difficult to do because prosecutions are individualized, and the answer would be, we have a right to investigate if they committed crimes.
But here's the thing. I don't know about Cassidy Hutchinson. She seemed like a lovely person. Maybe she had some parking tickets or speeding tickets or something. But I mean, what crime do they come up with that they're going to investigate her for? Testifying against the lying?
Excuse me, can I answer that question? How many people have we had on the show over the years who have spent decades in prison for crimes they did not commit and were convicted for?
Well, it's because usually the cop picks the wrong person.
So the Justice Department is going to cook the books if they choose to do it.
Yeah, I think it's a little harder.
It's harder to do. Whatever Jim said is wrong. I mean,
but would that be it? That she lied in front of Congress or something?
They would have to find. There had to be a crime, and yes, she'd have to. But you know, that would be the accusation, right? As you said, that she lied to Congress. It would be her version of the facts versus somebody else. That's not the substance of a prosecution beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah, and it's dismissed the year after it's filed.
Thank you, Judge Gertner. Woo!
Excuse me, Marjorie. Look how happy Judge Gertner is. Go ahead.
No, I mean, but they would have. They could. The problem is they could start a prosecution making that allegation. I don't think they could finish it.
Okay.
But certainly, to Jim's point, there would be lots and lots of dislocation in her life.
So this brings us to the pardons that Biden handed out, which lots of people are very upset about. He pardoned the people that were on the legislative committee, Liz Cheney, Dr. Fauci, some other people. Then he pardoned members of his family. So what did you make of those?
You know, that some of to members of his family was troubling. It's troubling that he felt he had to pardon Cheney and Fauci against, anticipating a lunatic successor. But practically speaking, that's probably right to do. What troubles me most is that people are looking at the Biden pardons as the equivalent of the Trump pardons, and it's not even in the same universe.
By the way, Marjorie's doing this. If you didn't hear yesterday, Chuck Todd has something called the Toddcast, which Marjorie loves, and it's really good, in which he did take the position you were just criticizing. Marjorie took him on yesterday. The Washington Post editorial board did the same thing. And let me tell you something. There's this guy at the Washington Post, David Moranis, who won the 1993 Pulitzer Prize at the Washington Post. And here's what he tweeted after the Washington Post did that equivalency thing.
He wrote a book about Bill Clinton.
The paper has utterly lost its soul, is what one of their Pulitzer Prize winning people said. What'd you write about this in The Contrarian, this new publication?
Well, I've been writing a lot about what judges should be doing, because in the final analysis, Trump is destroying the guardrails that the bureaucracy provided, the guardrails and even that Congress provided to some degree in the first administration. And the only guardrails, meaningful guardrails left, is the courts. And the courts have to step up to the plate. And what I wrote in The Contrarian is that the judges that had to dismiss the charges against the people that Trump had pardoned had to do it. He has plenary, means sort of overwhelming power to pardon people. But they were not going to do that. They were not going to walk silently into the night. They were going to say how preposterous and outrageous it was. And one after the other, these were Obama appointees, these were Reagan appointees, and there was one Trump appointee who said, pardoning these men can't wipe out their crimes, can't wipe out the public record. And the notion as part of Trump's pardon announcement was that somehow these people had been unfairly treated. And to a person, the judges said, I mean, these guys got due process that no one gets. I mean, an overwhelming attention to detail and due process. So those were the two themes. One is they were hardly unfairly treated. They were treated under the Constitution and even better than most defendants on the one hand. And what they did can't be wiped over by these pardons.
Are we allowed to say, I think we've said on the air, if Hillary Clinton would have been elected, what you would have been? We've said this, right?
The rumor was Attorney General.
The rumor is that Nancy Gertner would have been Attorney General. So would you, if you
Look
were
at this, Nancy Gertner, Pam Bondi,
well,
oh my God.
Matt Gaetz.
Matt Gaetz.
Would you have voted for Pam Bondi, who is about to be the Attorney General, and she's clearly going to get confirmed? When she was the Florida Attorney General, she was an election denier, and not just a vocal election denier, meaning with her voice, but she filed litigation on behalf of Trump and election denying. She is, I think it's very likely she's going to get confirmed because she's not Matt Gaetz, at least in my estimation. Would you have voted for her if you were a senator?
No.
Why?
Because she was an election denier. Because it was clear from findings from, what was it, how many courts was it, 60 courts that Trump brought these cases to, and each and every one said that there was no showing of any impropriety with respect to the election that would have been outcome determinative. That she said something different than those courts would have been disqualifying. Now, in the universe of Trump appointees, you know, she's fabulous. But that's in the universe of Trump appointees.
Yeah.
But no, that should have been disqualifying. You know, I mean, so who was it who wrote a column about Hegseth that everybody is focused just clearly as they should be on his sexual...
David Brooks, I think it was.
Yes, that's right,
yes.
on his sexual peccadillos and on his financial and his drinking. No one is talking about whether the man has any idea about the challenges that we face at this moment as a nation. And that ought to have been the discussion.
Well, he also, as we all know, from, what's her name, Hoover, who's a very conservative person who's on the board of one of the two small organizations.
Oh, yes, that's right.
He ran very small organizations. He couldn't run these tiny little organizations, and he's now going to run an almost $1 trillion agency. You know, one of the things, since we didn't get to Hegseth today, but since you mentioned him in passing, the latest accusation that none of the Republicans except Collins and Murkowski apparently care about is his second ex-wife, who, unless I'm wrong, did defend him on the "I was scared to death and locked in the closet" allegation.
She said it was emotional abuse, not physical abuse, but she had a safe word and she locked herself in the closet.
And what
That's
she
not
said,
a good sign.
What
generally.
she said in a statement last night is he was drunk more than he was sober.
That's right.
And this, again...
Apparently he had liquor, because according to some people, you could smell the liquor on his breath when he showed up to work in the morning at Fox. That's not a good sign either.
And he's probably going to be confirmed tomorrow because on a procedural vote, only, again, Collins, who we often criticize, from Maine, and
Murkowski
from Alaska were
Two
the only
women,
votes.
Obviously. And Jody Ernst from the senator from Iowa. I couldn't believe this, a sexual assault survivor and a military veteran. She, I guess, thought, okay.
What I don't know, because I don't follow it this carefully, is what trade-offs they're making.
She was afraid, I think, of being primaried. Or perhaps she was afraid of which often happens, threats against herself and her family.
That would be troubling. But I mean, the trade-offs I was talking about, which is that in the universe of these really horrible appointees, putting Pam Bondi aside for a moment, I will call this affirmative action for white male sexual abusers.
Wouldn't you say? It's like a sexual.
Totally
I
right.
mean, we've got RFK Jr. accused, Hegseth accused, Elon Musk accused of letting it go on in his company unchecked. We have Clarence Thomas, of course, in the Supreme Court, and we have Kavanaugh, who some people think he was in high school and.
Why don't we throw in Andrew Cuomo, who's leading in the race for mayor of New York, who was accused by the feds
and don't
of
forget
13
the president himself.
sexual abuse violations.
I'm lost in this discussion.
Yeah.
Where were we?
He's liable, of course, the president himself, liable for what they call sexual assault in New York State, but it would have been rape in Massachusetts. So it's a whole band of sexual assaulters.
Right. But
what the heck?
But with Joni Ernst, the question is whether, I mean, this is what we were talking about a moment ago about flooding the zone. You do enough incredible things that you have to pick one to be indignant about. You can't be indignant about 100%. And I wonder sometimes if the votes for Bondi and the vote for Hegseth is, well, we're going to stop X, but we can't stop Y.
I think that is
and that's
it.
the trade-off. I have no idea what the trade-off would be.
Yeah, I think that is it. But they've already put in Marco Rubio, who I think is going to be fine, and the other guy, Ratcliffe. He's running the CIA.
But did you see there was a Democrat who voted for him, I think it was Coons, who's Biden's fellow Delawarean, if that's a line, said, I voted for him, and the only reason I voted for him, I think it was 74-25, was because he was the only person I could imagine keeping Tulsi Gabbard under wraps, should she be confirmed. By the way, in light of our first conversation about no cell phones in school, an anonymous texter says, sex texts to Cassidy Hutchinson, that's it? No more cell phones in Congress. Now, Nancy Gardner, while you're still here, I think in part thanks to the vote of Anthony Kennedy, correct me if I'm wrong, in some 5-4 decisions, the Supreme Court began in the last several decades to move in the direction of the rest of the civilized world, not to abolish the death penalty, but to get rid of it for things like
adolescents.
Young people, non-homicide crimes, intellectual disabilities, that sort of thing. Obviously, one of these executive orders from Trump said essentially, get back to it on death penalty. Kennedy's not there. The conservative majority is stronger. Are we going to see total retrenchment on death penalty progress in this country? When I say progress, I mean doing away with it, which I know a lot of people in America disagree with, but I don't think there's another Western nation that is where we are.
Right, there is not. I mean, I don't think that they can be undone. So Supreme Court has limited the death penalty to adolescents under 18, has limited the death penalty with respect to intellectually disabled, has limited the death penalty, what was the third category now? I forgot.
Non-homicide
crimes, right. And I don't think that will be undone. I think that there will be 2 votes for it, which will be Thomas and Alito. But I don't think that the rest of the court would go that far.
That's very hard.
What about, when you're talking about judges standing up to the plate, the judge in the birthright citizenship thing called the effort blatantly unconstitutional, very quick. I thought that was pretty good.
Well, it is.
But what happens, what does the Supreme Court, do you think, if it gets there, do with that?
You know, I mean...
It's 14th Amendment.
Right. The 14th Amendment established birthright citizenship explicitly. There's literally one federal judge in the country who has expressed some concern about that, Judge Ho on the Fifth Circuit. He's literally the only one. For the Supreme Court to then say that language, that explicit language, that language that doesn't require clarification, enables the president to eliminate birthright citizenship would be extraordinary. There are exceptions, right? I mean, diplomats coming to this country who are not subject to the laws of this country, who have a child here, that child is not entitled to birthright citizenship. Trump, as I understand it, is trying to draw an analogy with illegal immigrants here as being the functional equivalent of diplomats, et cetera. There's a case from, I believe, the 1890s or the 1860s.
With a Chinese
immigrant, in which the court said exactly the opposite. More important than that, that's a bedrock principle. That was a bedrock principle of the U.S.
But the presidential immunity was such a shocker. That makes me nervous.
Well, that's right. So the language is clear. If you're an originalist, as they purport to be, you'd say categorically birthright citizenship is in the Constitution explicitly. It's not a matter of interpretation. With respect to immunity, the Constitution didn't speak directly. The president is not immune. The Constitution spoke about limiting a president so that he does not look like a monarch.
Yeah.
And so by inference, it certainly would not have conferred the kind of immunity that the court gave to Trump. But there was at least nothing in the Constitution that said anything in one way or the other, one can argue. Birthright citizenship is not even an issue. And you have to ask why he's going for that.
I don't know. I think a lot of people that don't want people coming into the country don't want pregnant women coming into the country. And I think that they think
it's also red meat to
they're coming over the border and giving birth immediately upon arrival.
That's right. But why is he doing something which will so clearly lose? That's what I don't understand.
Because we spend a lot of attention on that and stuff that is arguably less egregious, which is in the eye of the beholder, we don't focus on, and that gets through. Before you go, I want you to know, I've known you a long time, and you've totally screwed me. One of my coworkers typed to me a note, which they erased a minute ago, said, now everything that comes out of Boston Public Radio is going to have emblazoned on it, whatever Jim says is wrong, former Judge Nancy Gertner. You want to apologize or no? Okay, fine.
No.
Nice to see you, Judge Gertner.
Judge
Thanks
Gertner,
so much.
thank you very much. We've been speaking with retired federal judge Nancy Gertner. She's a senior lecturer at Harvard Law School and the Boston Public Radio contributor. We're very grateful for her time. Coming up after a quick break, our new segment, One More Thing, Two More Things, Red More Things, Blue More Things, whatever it's called. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
This week on Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, the recording industry's top honors are next week, and many alums of Boston's Berklee College of Music are Grammy nominees. We talked to two of them, jazz vocalist Esperanza Spalding, and mastering engineer and vinyl cutter Jet Galindo. That's Under the Radar with me, Callie Crossley, Sunday night at 6 here on 89.7 GBH and the GBH app.
Support for our programs comes from you and MIT Sloan Executive Education, offering 2 to 3 day courses and executive certificates for professionals seeking cutting-edge business insights on innovation, cybersecurity, AI, and more. Info at executive.mit.edu. And Celebrity Series of Boston, presenting McLeet, live at Berkeley Performance Center on Saturday, February 1st. McLeet refracts American funk, soul, indie pop, and jazz through traditional Ethiopian styles. Tickets at celebrityseries.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Monday, we're back in Brighton. We'll be back here Tuesday. And Mayor Wu will zoom in for Ask the Mayor. It's time for our new, sort of new, Two More Things segment. Each of us lists a thing that we didn't have room for in the show, but we think matters and we think you should hear about. What's yours?
Well, I'm going to start with Senator Susan Collins from Maine. And the reason being, I gave her a lot of, you know what, when she fell for Brett Kavanaugh when he was going to be nominated to the Supreme Court, when Kavanaugh was insisting about precedent and how he wanted to keep abortion accessible in the United States of America. She said, oh, he told me he was going to do that. And then, of course, he didn't. So I gave her a hard time. Well, now it's not the final vote. It's only a procedural vote. But at least she and Lisa Murkowski from Alaska said no to the alleged alcoholic, alleged sexual assaulter, multiply married pretty boy, Pete Hegseth, whose own mother said he treated women like you know what. She said she couldn't vote for him, and I'm so thrilled. She said she gave him credit for his courageous military service, and he is a decorated veteran. But she said, I'm concerned he doesn't have the experience and perspective necessary to succeed in the job. So they got to get 2 more Republicans. I don't know if they will. It doesn't look good. But thank goodness that 2 women stood up against this guy who's got no business running the Pentagon. And
his ex-wife, as I said, stood up and said he's more drunk than he is sober. I think that's really an endorsement. So I want to talk about the lottery. You know I hate the lottery.
You hate the lottery.
And I hate the lottery because it's inequitable.
Yeah.
And by the way, we return more money to cities and towns from our lottery than any state in America. You know what that means? That means the people of Massachusetts lose more money. Now, who are those people? There's a great story about Esme Jimenez in the Boston Globe about what I wrote about in the Globe about a decade ago, about the Robin Hood in reverse nature of this thing. Here's some math questions for you, Marjorie. One of the poorest communities in Massachusetts is Chelsea. They spend $50 million a year in the lottery. How much is that for every man, woman, and child in Chelsea?
I don't know, but it's a lot more than the rich communities like Weston and Wellesley.
$1,300 for every man, woman, and child.
Yep.
Harvard is one of the richest communities, Harvard, Mass. How much do they spend per capita?
$50.
Zero. So, okay, let's do this again.
Really?
Chelsea.
Don't they have a 7-Eleven in Harvard?
If they bet somewhere else. Okay. $1,300 for every man, woman, and child in Chelsea, most of which is lost, obviously. Harvard, zero. How about the money that's returned? Chelsea only gets less than $10 million, 20% of the money that its residents spent on the lottery returned to it for services. Harvard, which spends nothing, gets $2 million back from the state. Is that fair?
I think that
Is that fair?
I think you do not want to take away people's ability to dream that they're going to be the
How
lucky
about an equitable
one.
distribution then, if that's the case?
Well, what do you want? How do you want to do that, Jim?
Don't give Harvard money it didn't spend and give Chelsea the money that it did spend.
Well, that could be agreeable.
Oh, my
But you
God.
want to tell people who are like down on their luck, who think they can go in and buy a buck, they can go in and spend $5, and maybe they'll win the Mega Millions. Maybe they will.
That's not what I want to do.
Maybe they will.
No, it's not. What I want to do.
Take away their dreams,
what I want to
Jim.
do, if the legislature believes we need a couple of $1 billion more for cities and towns, rather than letting poor people gamble their money away, maybe they should have the courage to raise taxes equitably so that they don't have to subsidize cities and towns with the lottery. Do you agree with that?
Once again, if
Apparently
you're thinking
not.
that you could get the nice house, you could get the nice car, and maybe you throw a buck in there, or $10 in there, or $20 in there. I mean, if they want to spend
Can I end where I started?
Can they spend it if they want to
How
spend
do we
it that
have the
way?
most money for cities and towns from the lottery of any state in America? Because we lose the most money on the lottery
Okay, anybody
than any
listening
state in
from
America.
Chelsea, Jim wants to prevent you from doing it.
I bet you the people in Harvard sort of agree too.
Do it.
Okay, I'm done. Marjorie, by the way, is just taking that position because she wants to aggravate me. I know her well. She agrees in her heart, and we can leave it at
Okay, coming up after the 1 o'clock news, we're going to be joined by chefs Irene Lee and Tracy Chang ahead of a very, very busy Lunar New Year celebration. They've got some food over there. I'm very excited about it. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
GBH brings you coverage on a wide range of information so you can stay informed and engaged in our local community. We depend on listener contributions to keep this quality reporting going. Support your listening by pitching in at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you and the Museum of Science, where you can experience the heart of New England, their giant screen film showcasing this iconic region. You can see it now on the IMAX Dome screen. Tickets at mos.org. And Comcast Business, committed to providing connectivity for your business with network and cybersecurity solutions. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply. To learn more, you can call or visit comcastbusiness.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News, what matters to you?
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. President Trump says he wants states in control of emergency response to natural disasters, and he says he plans to sign an executive order to start the process of reforming or overhauling FEMA or, quote, maybe getting rid of it.
FEMA has been a very big disappointment. They cost a tremendous amount of money. It's very bureaucratic, and it's very slow. Other than that, we're very happy with them. Okay? And I think when there's a problem with the state, I think that problem should be taken care of by the state. That's what we have states for.
But he didn't offer details on his plans. He made the comments in North Carolina today, his first domestic trip of his second administration, where he will view hurricane damage. Later today, Trump tours the wildfire-ravaged areas of California in and around Los Angeles. He's scheduled to meet with Governor Gavin Newsom, even though he's criticized state leaders for their handling of the fires and the lack of water. Trump says he would supply aid to California if the states implement voter ID and loosens its environmental laws. Meanwhile, fire crews continue to battle several blazes. Steve Futterman has more.
With winds again diminishing, fire crews continue to make progress. One of the newest fires, the Hughes Fire, is still burning north of L.A. in the Castaic area, but it's no longer seriously threatening homes or businesses. It's now largely burning in wilderness areas, and fire crews are slowly getting more containment. This weekend, some rain is in the forecast. It won't be much. In some areas, it could reach an inch. It could help. However, with any rain now comes another problem, potential mudslides in burned-out mountain areas which no longer have any vegetation. For NPR News, I'm Steve Futterman in Los Angeles.
The U.S. government is trying to extradite a private investigator from the U.K. for his alleged role in a hacking campaign that targeted American climate activists. A lawyer for the private investigator said in a London courtroom the hacking operation her client is accused of leading was allegedly ordered by a lobbying firm working for ExxonMobil. NPR's Michael Copley has more.
A lawyer for the private investigator said the U.S. is trying to prosecute her client for a hacking operation allegedly commissioned by DCI Group, a public affairs firm in Washington, D.C. that represented ExxonMobil. The private investigator is Amit Forlit. He's previously denied ordering or paying for hacking. The Justice Department didn't respond to a message seeking comment. A British lawyer representing the U.S. said Forlit allegedly worked for a D.C. public affairs firm, which allegedly represented one of the world's biggest oil and gas companies. DCI and Exxon declined to comment on being mentioned in court. Both have denied being involved in hacking. Michael Copley, NPR News.
This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Red Line service will be suspended between JFK, UMass, and Braintree this weekend. As GBH's Jeremy Siegel reports, the T is doing work to increase the frequency of trains.
The shutdown that starts Saturday is the first of 3 partial weekend closures over the next month. The second is the weekend of February 8th, and the third is the weekend of the 22nd. During the closure, crews plan to update the Red Line signal system. Think traffic lights, but for trains. Right now, the system is analog. The switch to digital is supposed to lessen congestion and reduce costs. Shuttle buses will replace regular Red Line service during the closure, and commuter rail rides will be free between South Station and Braintree. Jeremy Siegel, GBH News 89.7.
Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey asking state lawmakers to allow cities and towns to deploy cameras throughout the Commonwealth to help catch and ticket speeding motorists. Globe reports that the proposal for a state-run speed camera enforcement program is part of Healey's $62 billion state budget proposal that she unveiled on Wednesday. Those who've seen it say it's a scaled-down version of legislation that died on Beacon Hill once before. Choo-choo. In sports, the Bruins and Celtics are off until tomorrow. The finals are set for the Australian Open. On the women's side, it's Madison Keys versus Arina Sabalenka. On the men's side, number 1, Jannik Sinner versus Alexander Zverev. We are at 30 degrees in Boston right now. I'm Henry Santoro. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Subaru, featuring the 2025 Forester with an updated exterior design and an 11.6-inch Starlink multimedia interface. Learn more at Subaru.com.
He is Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. Thank you. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. And boy, I tell you, I'm having a delicious lunch here. This is absolutely unbelievable. Love the Newsfeed Cafe, but this is a special treat from Tracy Chang and Irene Lee. Thank you for coming in. Hello, Jim.
Hello there, Marjorie. And Marjorie meant to say Mayor Wu will zoom in on Monday, but all the food got her distracted. For Ask the Mayor at noon. So the year of the snake is nearly upon us. The wood snake, I should say. Lunar New Year kicks off next Wednesday, the 29th, even though a lot of people listening thinks the year of the snake actually began on January 20th. Figure that out.
One, Jim.
If you can't figure it out, call me after the show. Thank you. The celebration extends far beyond with events all next week, really through the month, including at the places our next 2 guests, James Beard Award-winning chef, restaurateur, cookbook author Irene Lee, and Tracy Chang, the woman behind the James Beard-nominated Pagu in Cambridge and co-founder of the nonprofit Project Restore Us. I should say they're 2 of my favorite people, which has nothing to do with anything. Lucky for us, Marjorie thinks they were on the show to bring us lunch. They were actually here to promote what they do.
That's true.
For Lunar New Year.
But I didn't eat lunch. I was very hungry, so I just dug right in so I wouldn't be chewing on the air.
And if there are people out there like Jared Bowen who are upset about his alleged disease, misophonia, my response is, get over it. Irene and Tracy, it's great to see you both. How are you guys?
We're good.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much. This is such a treat. So Irene, tell people who may not know, what's Lunar New Year and what's the deal with the snake?
Wood snake.
Wood snake.
To me, Lunar New Year is just an excuse to eat more with the people you like. So
My
that's
kind
what we're
of
doing
person.
here today.
Love
Yes,
her.
exactly. Yeah, wear your elastic waistband and come out to Pagu or Mei or any one of the numerous events around the city over the next couple weeks.
Well, that answered nothing. Let's try
Let's try Tracy.
So give us a little background on Lunar New Year, other than the food. And I'm with Irene
And
on
the
that.
wood snake.
And the
This
wood
sounds like
snake deal, yeah.
2025 is going to be a really good year with this wood snake, I think.
Yeah, I sure hope so.
I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always about family and friends gathering around, again, around good food, and a lot of kind of entertainment and celebration. So at Pagu, we have Walam Kung Fu Academy, and they're coming to perform several lion dances.
Which are so fun.
Yeah, Saturday, Sunday, and Wednesday. So this weekend, we're starting early, right? I know Irene has hosted many lion dances as well. And so, yeah, we're excited to support them and to bring in a ton of families. I have young kids now, so they're almost 4 and 5 years old, and they love this kind of entertainment. They forget to eat. And like the parents are like, oh my God, this is amazing. Eat crispy pork belly the whole time.
So what are you doing over there at May for Lunar New Year, Irene?
We are hosting our favorite occasion, which we call bottomless dumplings. So unfortunately, we are sold out for Saturday, but we're going to host about 150 people to come try all of our different dumpling flavors at the Dumpling Factory in Southie.
By the way, I looked up the year of the wood snake, and I don't understand how it works. I thought there was like a rotation for what year it is for the Lunar New Year. Wood snake, it's been like 60 years or something like that. Is that true? Who knows? In any case, Marjorie, this is good. Here's what you're supposed to do during Year of the Wood Snake. You're supposed to engage in introspection.
Right.
That's good for me.
Uh-huh.
Nurture creativity. Okay. And connect with nature.
Okay, and also it's supposed to improve in your relationships,
thank you very
right?
much. Good, okay, fine.
Strengthening your bond with loved ones, it could encourage empathy, deep communication, mutual understanding, all these wonderful things. So how do you get these attributes? Do you have to bring the wood snake into your house, or do you have to go to Lunar New Year? Or how does this happen?
We're dodging these questions because we don't know.
We know the answer.
You don't know.
We've had
So
snakes
good to have
in the
an
house
honest
before.
guest, by the way.
Do I need to buy a wood snake? I don't know. I'm ready for all
I
these
think
wonderful
Irene and I
things.
do these things every day, wood stink or not.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
You can connect with nature by eating all the vegetables in this salad.
Okay,
That's right.
fine.
I have a lot of vegetables right here on my plate.
So are there, before we talk about the actual food and drink and chocolates you brought us that are available to anybody who's interested, if you will give websites and stuff in a couple of minutes, are there special foods associated with Lunar New Year or no?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Like what?
Every food has a meaning.
Like what?
There's food we're eating today, but I'll tell you about the food that we're also eating at the restaurant. So you got to eat long noodles, right? Long noodles, long life. We brought you mochi for dessert.
Mm-hmm.
The etymology behind the words, right? So it's nian gao in Mandarin, and it means that every year is like nian gao shen. So every year you're kind of improving and achieving more. And so you got to eat this, the mochi, the sticky rice, if you want to improve every year.
And you're doing whole steamed fish for nian nian yo yu.
Oh, wow. Heads and everything?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And we do it as a takeout kit if people want to celebrate at home. So every single dish has a meaning. So you better, it's like Pokemon, you got to catch them all, you got to eat it all, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you want all these, attributes, all the good luck, all the, all the prosperity and growth and introspection and empathy in the new year, you got to eat these things.
You better
I'm not
eat
doing
up.
the introspection.
Okay.
By the way, you don't like head-on things.
I don't like
I
head-on,
was
but
at
that's
Tracy's
okay.
restaurant about 2 weeks ago to take takeout, and what was carried over was the biggest pig with the biggest head I've ever seen in my life. There were little kids. They get freaked out by the head deal or no?
Some people ask for it, right?
Yeah.
So, this was actually a little pig. It was a big little pig.
That was a little
It was
pig?
a suckling pig.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. My kids are sometimes like, like have mixed feelings about it, but then they're like,
Is
it's
that
so
what happens to
crispy.
Peppa?
Yeah.
So, tell us about over in South Boston, what you do over there if you want to go over and get. I know you're sold out for the big event tomorrow, but you can go over there and get these wonderful dumplings that you make. And then you don't have to do anything, you just heat them up.
That's right. These dumplings are fully cooked, so they can bail you out of dinner anytime.
Yes.
You can even microwave them if you must, which I have certainly done in an emergency. We produce about 40,000 dumplings at the factory every week. We have a team that just cranks them out. And what I'm really excited about this year is we sent 30,000 five-spice tofu dumplings to Boston Public Schools. So on Wednesday, a bunch of Boston Public School students are going to eat our tofu dumplings in celebration of Lunar New Year.
That is fantastic, because
Yay.
sometimes the lunches can be a little, you know what I mean, and then they'll get these great dumplings. It'll be absolutely fantastic.
Well, we hope they love them. We're really excited.
You know what you do? Before we get to the actual food that you guys brought, we're going to talk about in a second.
I already ate some.
I know you did, but you're not supposed to. We're supposed to be surprised and say, oh, that's great. But
it's unbelievable.
I drank one of Tracy's things. She said, can you act surprised on the air when you drink it? I will act surprised in a couple of minutes. One of the other things you do is you do classes. And I have to say, I did the pulled noodle thing at Tracy's joint, and I was the worst student by far.
Great.
But they treat, when you go to the dentist when you're a little kid, and the dentist says, oh, you were such a brave boy, little Jimmy, whatever. Tracy pretends, even if you don't know what you're doing,
I'm a dentist.
that you do. And all
you get
kinds
a sticker,
of courses.
Jim?
No, but in all seriousness, it was huge fun. I did learn a lot, and I did it at home. You do classes over there, too, dumpling making and that sort of thing?
Yeah, dumpling making, scallion pancakes. And I think for us at Maymay, and I suspect for Tracy also, we do these classes because so many of our childhood memories are about sharing food and cooking with people we love. And so many people have come to the dumpling factory and said to me, I remember when you were little, I came over to your house and your mom taught us how to make dumplings. And that's just such a big part of the culture, is sharing, not just in the eating, but also in the cooking. If you're going to eat, you get to put to work.
Well, you know, Tracy, you mentioned you got 2 little kids. I think I made a big mistake. I can't cook anyway.
Why? By having 3?
No, by
okay, sorry.
by not getting my kids when they were little into the kitchen thing. I mean, do your kids, are they old enough to help you?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, they get upset if they don't get to help me.
How old are
they? They're 4 and 5, and they will pull up stools and chairs. And I mean, I did this. Like, I would make fried rice and be standing on a stool because I couldn't see above, a table.
Well, tell them who your grandmother was, by the way. That's where you got your start, right?
Yeah, my grandmother had a restaurant. It was Tokyo restaurant in Cambridge around the Fresh Pond area.
It's great.
Yeah, she used to serve like Yo-Yo Ma and Julia Child, Pat Morita.
Wow.
And me.
Jim Browdy.
Thank you very much. Thank
And you know what else sounds wonderful? I think it would be a great thing to do. You mentioned the noodles. I don't know if you meant the ramen noodles.
No, I meant
But I think a ramen masterclass.
We've been doing that.
Yeah, that sounds like so fantastic because you're learning how to make them fresh for yourself.
Yeah.
You know what's great, by the way, just as an aside, before you tell us what food you brought, and we'll act surprised even the things we've tasted already, is in the pulled noodle class that you and your colleagues did, you have a video of these Chinese chefs. I think it was in China, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, and they are, if you don't know what a pulled noodle is, it starts as a little thing, and it gets bigger, longer, and longer. How far apart would you say these Chinese chefs are when they finish the long noodle? 30 feet?
I mean, they're talented, and we're just riffing. So these guys, I mean, they're getting way past their wingspan, and they're dancing with it.
I know, it's beautiful.
They're like tossing it at you. They're really having fun with it.
Okay, so what you bring and what are we eating?
Yeah.
Start. You go.
Of course, we have to talk about the crispy pork, right?
Fabulous.
So suyuk in Cantonese, but crispy pork. This is a labor of love, like a week long to make this. You got to blanch the pork, dry the pork, salt the pork, crisp the pork, etc. But roasted fresh this morning.
And the crispy skin
Super
is
crispy.
insane.
It's great.
What else? What's the salad?
The salad. So this is a cucumber, wood ear, and goji berry salad. We do it with the tamari and sherry vinegar dressing.
It's fabulous.
Yeah.
And the egg rolls.
Yeah. Pork and shiitake and cabbage. Yeah, so super tender, really juicy inside from the cabbage. And we have 2 dipping sauces for you, a Thai chili hot sauce and the cranberry hoisin, both we make in-house.
What do you think of the food that Tracy pulls together there over at Pagu, Irene?
I love it so much, I got married there.
No, is that true?
Yeah, of course.
I didn't know that.
Wonderful.
My spouse is here. We had the best
Where's your
party.
spouse?
Hi, Chris.
Hey there. Oh my God. Hi, welcome.
We had the best party, and I just figured, if we're going to drop a bunch of money on a wedding, it better be for Tracy. And we had such great food. Everyone still talks about it.
Well, I'm
a fan.
I don't want to trash the places where I get Chinese food.
So don't.
And Thai food.
Okay, let's
But this is really special.
Oh my God, the crust on the egg rolls
thing. Oh, the egg
is
roll.
unbelievable. It's
What are these drinks? What are these things here?
Oh, yeah. So we've been having fun recently. I want you guys to taste through. So the first one that says Gen Maicha on your left, we've been making sparkling teas, and this is inspired by my friend who did a master's on kombucha at Harvard, because you can do that now, right?
Ooh.
So these I have made every single beverage. This is Gen Maicha, fermented for about 8 to 10 weeks in the style of kombucha, but not with all the stuff that's in like supermarket kombucha, right? It's like adaptogenic, hibiscus, lavender, potpourri, right? But this is the tea. This is the tea as it ages. And it's healthy.
Yeah, why is it healthy?
Yeah. Well, it's got these natural probiotics, and it has the SCOBY and the cellulose, and so it's just good for your gut. It's good for your GI. It's good for, drinking every day.
Ails you. What's the second thing, the spruce thing? What is that?
Second one is spruce. So I found the tea to be a little bit boring on its own. It was a Yunnan black tea.
Boring.
But that's because I added the spruce.
Oh, of course you did. Exactly.
The spruce has this kind of wintergreen lemon, a little bit of a resin flavor, but it's like, oh, it tastes kind of like a soda, kind of like a sour beer, but it's good for you.
And a lot of carbonation, too.
Yeah, this one's extra fizzy.
Oh, my goodness. Do we still have the tops of these?
Yeah.
What do you want to seal them up, take them home?
I do.
I have them. I got one for you.
Maybe you buy some.
Well,
from
I did
Pago,
buy
you know?
some.
We have some here unopened too.
That's what I was going to ask you. Do you have to go to the restaurant, or can you get these online, or what's the deal?
You can go to the restaurant. We're still figuring out, and maybe we got to call up our friend Irene Lee to figure out like how to scale things.
Yeah.
But right now, these
Okay.
are made by me, made by me.
You know, it's not like Ohio. It's like Central Square. Do you know
No,
this?
I know.
What's
I
the
was
third
just checking.
one? What's
The third one is, like mystery, no label, right? But this is our newest flavor. So label design is still under development by my husband, Mark, and AI. And so this is a sencha tea. Usually when you drink a Japanese sencha, it's super grassy. But this one, when you ferment it, you're like, whoa, pineapple lychee, what is going on? Like grassy tea becomes pineapple lychee? Like what?
fabulous.
So teas are a lot of fun.
Again, I don't mean to trash the. It's kombucha. That's how you say it,
Kombucha,
right?
yeah.
That I've had before because my son-in-law is big into it.
Yeah.
This tastes so much better.
Yeah.
Yeah, so much better.
It's fabulous.
It looks
you.
better
Thank
too.
you.
And did I not act surprised when I tasted that for the second time? I acted like it was totally. What do you think of the drinks?
I think they're delicious. The
Yeah.
genmaicha is my favorite.
It is.
It has that sort of toasty flavor to it.
Now, let me ask you something. I think about a lot of listeners and viewers are thinking about you and your husband. Let me correct. Were married at Pago, correct?
Yes.
So I assume that Tracy and her husband were married at Maymay. Is that correct? Were they?
They had, I think, a COVID wedding, so there was no such
that
celebration,
true?
unfortunately.
If you look at the timeline of things, we got married in July in the backyard, and I had a baby in December.
That's
So
right.
it was a tight time.
Just
Surprise.
under the line. Just under the line.
We had a lot of time to plan things. And then COVID hit in March.
Yeah.
Okay, so to segue to what you brought, Irene, I said to you before we went on the air, one of my favorite, your dumplings are spectacular. One of my favorite things I bought at your South Boston thing was a cheeseburger. I'm a cheeseburger aficionado. I would say I'm an expert on the cheeseburger. I've never had a cheeseburger on a scallion pancake before I had it at your place. Not only was it fabulous, it was insanely inexpensive. It was. No, it was. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Better raise the price.
That was really. So the reason I bring that up is because it turns out the scallion pancake has a connection to the chocolate bar you brought.
Yes, let me hand out some chocolate to both of you.
Thank you very much.
And at Maymay, in addition to dumplings, we specialize in scallion pancake sandwiches. And I, too, had never had a scallion pancake cheeseburger before we made one. We started buying our scallion pancakes from a business that's based in Revere. We had been importing them from Taiwan previously, and we loved that there was this multi-generational local family business, and one of the daughters of the family makes these incredible chocolates with different Asian flavors. So Jim, you have pork floss with caramelized white chocolate. Marjorie, you have orange and Sichuan peppercorn. Preserved tangerine is one of my favorites. We sell all of these at Maymay just because we think they're so fun. You can't get this stuff anywhere else.
No,
so.
it's not just because it's so fun. One of the things that unites the two of you, beyond the fact that I know you're friendly, I know you both hate this, is you are as civically minded as any two human beings in a tight business as anybody I've ever met. You are busy almost full-time promoting local, small, independent businesses like these chocolatiers kind of thing, right? I mean, that is one of the major things you do.
Well, I think, Chinese culture is so communal, and that's what we need each other. We need to be doing this for each other, and we both have opened our businesses and kept them going with so much community support. So paying it forward feels good, and it's delicious. So why not?
Can you talk for a minute? I want to get Tracy, so that people that haven't heard her before, tell us some of the things you did during the pandemic when you're trying to keep your business alive. Your kids were like low single digits. No, I'm serious. Explain briefly what you...
Yeah, I was breastfeeding at the time.
In addition to breastfeeding, tell people what you did, what you created.
Yeah, so we started 2 nonprofit initiatives. The first was Off Their Plate. Irene was one of the first 10 people that I called to be like, yo, how do we do this? And then from there, within like the next 2 months, that was emergency feeding for healthcare centers and community health centers. And after that, we said, within like a month in, we're like, yo, what about this like grocery model, right? Like cooked food is like, has a short shelf life. What if we created a grocery model? And then we just started piloting that with Off Their Plate, and then we started another nonprofit together called Project Restore Us. We kept that one local. The first one we scaled to like 12 cities nationwide, like $12 million in funding. Barack Obama like tweeted and Instagrammed about us.
Kidding.
It was crazy, and we're like, whoa, okay, people really really do care about this initiative. And then we said, hey, we gotta hit local, and we gotta make this impact last. What does that mean? Because we didn't know how long COVID would last. We didn't know how long essential workers, like our employees, would need this kind of help. And so with the Project Restore Us model, people were guaranteed food for 6 to 8 weeks, which later we were able to extend that to months and months. And I mean, that was going for a few years after 2020.
And one of the things that Tracy was really smart about was making sure that we were buying culturally appropriate groceries, you know, the kinds of things folks actually eat. And so, you know, masa, corn flour for making tortillas and pupusas, beans of all kinds. I think we might have caused a regional bean shortage with our work, but, you know, I think that really makes the difference. The text messages we got from recipients were so beautiful. Many people blessed us many times. So I just think that was really insightful, and we were able to leverage the industrial supply chain to keep feeding our communities.
It's fabulous.
So Tracy Chang, I've also read where you give a lot of talks at, you know, hot shot places like RISD in Providence, and Brown in Providence, and Harvard and BU. Are you talking about food? Are you talking about what you did during the pandemic? What?
The whole story.
The whole story.
Yeah. I mean, awkwardly, people want me to talk about myself, and I'm like, ooh. But really, like, I think what resonates with young people, especially when I talk to, say, an undergraduate community, which the last 3 talks have been undergrad communities, you know, they're in this, like, idealist mindset of, like, a young 20-something. And I've been there, and sometimes I'm still there in my head, right? And I'm 37 now, but I sometimes think like a 20-something, sometimes think like a 99-year-old. But they want to know, like, how did you do it? Why did you do it? You know, and who are all the people that helped you do that? How do you start something like that? So much of it is like, how do you get started? And I think for Irene and I, this is where it's something we have in common, where it's like, well, how do you get started? You start doing it. I've been doing it. I started last week, you know, and then you just start sharing that information with folks, and you figure it out along the way too. Yep. You're not scared to get started. You're not scared to jump into something. And then of course, like, you always ask for help and go. And
by the way, I watched one of her lectures at Harvard. And you're like, what was the class? She's lecturing on long noodles. And I'm saying to myself, how the hell does the long noodle fit into, what was the course about? Was it a math course?
It was Harvard Science and Cooking. So, you know, they apply math and science and physics, you know, and they talk about the elasticity and extensibility of the noodle.
It was brilliant.
They got to do equations. I don't have to do equations.
It was absolutely. Can I, while you're still here for a second, Marjorie's going to give the websites in a minute if you want to, and you should. Their stuff is great, and they're wonderful people. When I was talking to Marjorie before, I was thinking about, of all ethnic foods that have become so huge in this country now, I'm thinking that at least in this community, and I think everywhere in this, you know, it wasn't Chinese, Asian food the first, you know, the Sally Lings and obviously the Joyce Chens in Boston, your grandmother, obviously, that kind of thing. You're both nodding. It's still, I mean, there are a lot of trends in America that are short-lived. Particularly around food as well, not only in a variety of ways. Asian food, Chinese food is as huge, if not huger today than it was when it broke into America's psyches, you know, like 50, 60 years ago. Is that true, or am I wrong about that?
I would hope so. I don't know if you know,
what do you think,
has,
Irene?
like, stats around it, but
Sure. I mean, I think
popular.
There's so many, almost any town you go to, no matter where you are, there's at least one Chinese restaurant that's been doing their thing there for years and years, which I think is so cool. A lot of it has to do with the history of immigration and the Chinese labor that helped build this country, you know, from the railroads to vineyards in Napa. And now, of course, there's so many international students here in Boston. So I think it's just really cool to see the interest and the dining population kind of evolve as things change.
And now you have every variety of Asian food. You have Thai, Asian fusion, Vietnamese, Korean barbecue. I mean, all these places. I have a million of these places right on Beacon Street in Brookline, and they're packed.
Yeah,
all
and
the time.
There's still more cuisines that we want to see represented in Boston. There's not a ton of Filipino food. There's not a lot of Lao food. So we're working on, you know, supporting these up and coming chefs who want to represent their culture in kind of a personal and authentic way. And that's something that Tracy and I are both always trying to push forward.
Yeah,
well, let me just say, you were two of the best people I ever met, doing some of the most wonderful, not only things for the community, but producing some of the best food I've ever eaten. And also your cookbook, your most recent thing, also changed my life. What's the name of that thing? What's the name of the most
Perfectly Good Food.
Perfectly Good. And explain
Yeah.
what the theme is there.
Yeah, the theme is really how to cook with what you have, waste less food, have more fun.
Yeah,
I haven't had more fun, but I'm wasting less food than I am cooking what
Well,
I
that
have.
should be
so
more fun
that's good
inherently,
enough.
I hope.
it is,
Yeah. You're very kind, Jim. Could you
Yeah.
tell our moms what you said?
Well, I hope they're
good.
listening. So happy Lunar New Year to you two, and thanks for bringing this wonderful stuff, and good luck with everything you're working
So
on.
I'm going to think about Lunar New Year and hope that the wooden snake comes to inspire me or whatever.
I think it will.
And yeah, we hope
Well,
so.
you're actually introspective, unlike somebody else we know.
Oh, okay.
Like me. Okay. See you guys.
Thank
Great
you
to
so
see you.
much.
Thank you
for coming
both.
in. We have been speaking with Mamie Dumplings, Irene Lee, a James Beard award-winning chef and cookbook co-author of Perfectly Good Food, a totally achievable zero-waste approach to home cooking. And by the way, even though I'm a lousy cook, that is a very helpful book just for the regular person in the kitchen. It's a great book. And Tracy Chang, the woman behind the James Beard-nominated Pagu and co-founder of Project Restore Us. MemeDumplings.com and Go Pagu, which is Pagu. By the way, Meme is Mei. Meme Dumplings and Go Pagu. Pagu.com for more info on all things Lunar New Year. Sorry, I botched those names a little bit. After a quick break, we're opening the phone and
Great to
text
see you
lines.
both. Thanks.
We have another topic. It's kind of related to food and
Sort
home.
of, yeah, indirectly, yeah.
We have all these things at home. We have fancy plates, maybe china from your parents or grandparents, or we have a special bottle of wine we're quote unquote saving for the right time, letting it collect dust and spoil. After a week like this one, are we better off just treating ourselves when we're able to the suit that we never wear because it's too special, the food we don't eat because it's too special, the liquor we never drink because it's too special? You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Judy Ewell in for Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, Carmen Ortiz, the former U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts, is sharing her thoughts on the DOJ's directive on investigations into state and local officials who don't comply with federal immigration authorities. A portion of the Red Line is shutting down this weekend. The T says changes to its signal system will lead to faster service. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And the University of Massachusetts Amherst, ranked the #1 public university in New England by U.S. News and World Report. You can learn more about research, innovation, and economic impact for the Commonwealth at umass.edu. And New England Recovery Center, providing inpatient addiction treatment in state-of-the-art facilities located in Westboro, Mass. Learn more at newenglandrecoverycenter.org or by calling 1-877-MY-REHAB.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio as I continue to eat food from Meme and Pagu, which is spectacular. She's Marjorie Egan. I'm Jim Bradley. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Mayor Wu joins us on Monday. She'll zoom in this coming Monday for Ask the Mayor. For the rest of today's show, Marjorie and I have a proposal. Take that fancy china, that real silverware from your mother, that nice bottle of wine that's caked in dust, and instead of waiting for that special occasion, just use it now. We were inspired by a piece in the New York Times by that same title. It's great. Just use it. That makes the case for getting the nice dishes out from the cupboard and enjoying something nice for once. Treat yourself. But we want to extend it to every nicety you've been keeping for yourself, whether it's, I don't know, the candle that you've never lit in your house, the well-tailored suit you only bring out for never. The number is 877-301-8970. Call or text. What's the joyful thing you've been depriving yourself of for that special occasion, and why do you do this? And important to this, what's it going to take for you to embrace the now and accept that you deserve to enjoy the finer things you've been waiting to use in life when you can? Because if you can't have your cake and eat it, why not just eat it, I guess, is our position. At 877-301-8970 is the number.
You know, I remember when I was a kid, you know, people had silver. That was like a big wedding present, you know, when I was growing up.
Huh?
So your grandmother had silver, your great-grandmother had silver.
I have my mother's.
And in Fall River, it was a little rough and tumble for a while. They were stole. You know, they were stealing. The people came in the house and stole the silver, and we lost it. But I got my great aunt's silver, and it's gorgeous. It's the most beautiful thing going.
Do you use it?
At Christmas or like at Thanksgiving or something
Why?
like that. I don't know. I just think I just shouldn't take it out. But when I take it out, you feel kind of ridiculous having scrambled eggs with the beautiful silver. I guess that's maybe it. Or they used to save all the linen napkins. You know, I've got those too. That
Jamie said he has great napkins.
yeah,
He
great
never
napkins.
uses them. Yeah.
The problem with linen napkins, of course, is they get dirty and you have to, iron them and all
But
that
if they
kind of
don't
stuff.
get dirty by not using them, what's the value of having them, I guess is the point. Should you read the great quote from the great writer Joan Didion?
Oh,
She
yes.
used her good silver every day, and her quote was, because every day is all there is.
She's
That's
right.
pretty
I mean,
good,
she's
right?
absolutely right. And one last thing, and then we can start talking. It applies to everything. Like you said, the liquor that you say, if somebody gave you a great bottle of single malt scotch, and if you are, why don't you drink it? Well, you're saving it. Why are you saving it? You just drink it. And I wrote this kind of schmaltzy column when I was at the Herald. I didn't want to show it to you.
You're
but it was
promoting
kind of
something
schmaltzy.
you wrote that is
a long
stunning.
time ago. A long time ago.
Go ahead.
But it was about going to my cousin's house. And I remember when I was a little girl, my aunt had this Franciscan desert rose china. A lot of people will recognize it because it has these little raised roses with the little like rosebuds on it.
You mean like you can feel it?
Yeah, you can feel
I know
it.
what
It's
you're
like
talking
a
about,
relief
yeah.
kind of thing. And I thought, this was like years. It's been in the family for like 100 years. And the people that first bought it, they're dead. They're long dead. They've been dead like forever. But the china is still there, and it gets passed on through the family. And you remember when you were a little kid eating off those same Franciscan desert rose plates as you do when you're a grown up or when you got kids or grandkids of your own.
I want to read a note from our colleague Zoe. In my house, it's an accomplishment if the takeout makes its way to an actual plate, let alone the fancy china. That is speed is what a lot of us are.
Oh gosh.
I think this piece by who wrote this, I don't have it right in
Which
front
piece?
of me. Just use it. Whoever, the New York Times piece, we'll find out in a minute. Who wrote it? You don't have it in front of you. We'll find it in a second.
It's Rukmini Calamachi.
And by the way, if there is somebody out there who is not, Marjorie and I are the same way. We hold on to expensive bottles of stuff if somebody gives it to us. We only use whatever Marjorie said, the fine silverware at Christmas time, all this kind of stuff. And you say to yourself when you read this, why should you not spread the joy all the time? And maybe at some point it gets muted, but you have much more of an opportunity to feel good about things that matter.
What are you waiting for? I guess
Exactly.
that's the question. And especially if you have like just a couple of friends over for dinner. I mean, why not break it out right then?
I agree. Or but what if you're not having a couple of friends over for dinner? If you have beautiful plates or a beautiful candle or a beautiful bottle of wine, drink the damn bottle, use the fork, use the plate. By the way, I don't do any of these things, but I totally subscribe to it after I read this piece. 877-301-8970.
You know what else people used to have years ago?
No.
Linen tablecloths.
Yeah.
Those were huge. You ever
Yeah.
break those out?
Yeah.
Never.
Well, you're worried you get in a spot in it, and then
That's
you got to
right.
do it with whatever and whatever.
Dan in Dorchester. What
Dan
do
in
you think,
Dorchester.
Dan?
Hi, Dan.
Hey, so I've been in the liquor business for a long time, and the whole idea of holding back a bottle is ridiculous to me. One of the biggest things is I could walk out my door tomorrow and get hit by a bus, and then you guys are enjoying my favorite bottle of wine or whatever.
It's a beautiful
That's
thought there,
Dan. And it's kind of an insult to the guy or the person who makes it, because they made it to be enjoyed, and there you are just sitting on it and waiting.
Well, you know, also, the other argument I'd make if I were you, I got an expensive bottle of wine from a friend a few years ago, and I did exactly what you say don't do, and I held on to it for a number of years. You know what happened when I finally opened it? It had turned like to vinegar.
Yeah.
I mean, it was horrible, and I had wasted this out of my price range kind of thing. So, Dan, I think you say it beautifully, even though you have an interest in it. Thank you very much for the call.
Or the cork dries out.
Yeah.
That happens a lot too. If you don't.
So you're going to change your ways?
I'm going to break out all the china and the silver tonight, Jim, when I eat my pizza for dinner.
No, I'm serious. I mean, you don't have to do it every night, but more free. Did you only use that silverware once a year, or the china, whatever it was, just at Christmas?
Not very much. I even have a nice case. I go through this whole thing. I hide it in the house, because of all the silver that got stolen when I was a kid. I hide it in different places, and I forget
Is
where I
that
put it,
true?
of course. Yeah, because...
What do you think? Someone's going to break in your house and take a fork?
I don't think people care. You have it in a box. You have it like a velvet-lined box,
Ooh.
or you put it in a velvet-lined pouch, or
Yeah.
you wrap it in saran wrap, and that keeps it from getting tarnished.
Sure you do.
Yeah, something to remember if you're going to break out the silver,
Okay,
Jim.
fine.
Anne from Holden, what do you think?
Hello, Ann.
Oh my God, I'm already on board with this. Use that silver, Marjorie.
I
Oh my
know,
gosh.
I should.
I put my good china out every night. I put it in a dishwasher, and who cares if the gold rim goes away? I don't care. Drink the wine, use the china, use your silverware, Marjorie. I could be dead tomorrow. I want to enjoy it.
Another I could be dead tomorrow caller. Ann, thank you for the call. So apparently being hit by a bus is one of the great motivators. Anonymous texter, what a great topic. I've been saving my last bit of old model glue for a really appropriate reason for sniffing. I shouldn't have read that even. Why did I read that?
That's a good one. That's from like the scene from Airplane, Jim, right?
I know, one of the great scenes ever.
I picked a really bad day to quit smoking. I picked a really bad day to quit drinking. I picked a really bad day to give up sniffing glue. At which point Lloyd Bridges' hair sticks straight up in the air. Remember that?
I do indeed.
Yeah, that was a good one.
877. By the way, we have a little sound here from Friends. Did you ever see Friends?
The show?
I think I'm the only person who's never seen one episode of Friends.
I've seen it a few times.
Okay, so here's Monica, whoever she is, deciding to have a dinner and to use the fancy china.
We're using our fancy china, and it's very expensive, so please be careful. Okay, just to be clear, comedy with the plates will not be well received.
How come my plate's less fancy than everyone else's? Do you not trust me with a fancy plate?
No, honey, that's a special plate. See, it's a game. Whoever gets that plate wins.
Can't believe I won.
By the way, was a laugh track the single worst thing that ever happened to television in the history of the world? That was Monica, again, whoever she is, from Friends. 877-301-89. I'm really serious. You know, you're impressionable. I'm not quite as impressionable as you are.
Yeah, I'm too
I read this
impressionable.
one piece, and I really think I totally changed my method of operation, like right away. It is totally true. It's like the dishes, they're really beautiful. Not only do I not bring them out for Christmas, I don't bring them out at all because I forget by Christmas.
Are they in the trunk of
I knew you were going to
your
say
car
that with my mother's
their
ashes. No, the plates in the ashes have different emotion. Why is that funny? Why is that? You're like a human laugh track. I mean, look at just look at Marjorie for a minute, if you don't mind, and Jamie and Aiden.
Everyone's laughing, Jim.
Three
Everyone's
losers
laughing.
I work with here. And probably Zoe and Hannah are laughing back, and John and whoever else. Nicole's laughing. Everybody's laughing. Okay, Doug in Orleans, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Well, hi.
Hi.
Thank you very much for taking the call.
Of course.
I'm looking at my dining room table, and I'm looking at my mother's silverware.
Yes.
And I'm thinking about the love that I had for my grandparents. Every time we eat with the silverware that used to be in a wooden box, velvet lined, and which we never pulled out underneath the low boy, except once a year or something. Now we do it and have been doing it for 10 years every day, every meal.
Wow.
And how did you make that
And-
decision? Wait, Doug, before you go ahead, what was the epiphany you had that caused you to do what Marjorie and I now want to do, which is integrated into our daily lives rather than alleged special occasions? How'd you do that?
I think it was art. I'm a painter, and you get inspirations, you get flashes, and I got this flash that it made no sense to keep all this beautiful my grandparents' silverware in a box underneath the low boy.
I love that call. I think it's beautiful. I
Yeah.
love that, Doug. Thank you very much for making the call. Appreciate
And the
it.
silver is beautiful. It's always got the little carvings on the side, and it's very shiny. I remember when they stole the silver the first time.
What do you mean they? Who are they? Who comes in and
When I was
steals-
a kid in our house.
Who's
growing
stealing
up.
it?
I don't know who stole it.
Okay.
Somebody stole it. And my poor father got so frustrated, he decided, we used to have those, I grew up in a really old house, in my grandfather's old house, where they locked the big mahogany doors, and he locked them with the keys, so you couldn't open the mahogany doors. And he said, that's great, all the silver, we just leave it in there, it'll be fine. And then the next time they came in to steal the silver, they just crowbarred the doors right open. Isn't that
Steal
awful?
the silver?
to steal the silver and a lot of other stuff.
You never told me this. It's very sad
we
stories.
We were always getting robbed.
So you should be using the stuff now for two reasons. One, you could be hit by a bus tomorrow, as we learned.
I might get robbed.
And two, you might get robbed.
But I've hidden it. I've hidden it well.
Where's it hidden? No, seriously.
I'm not
Let me just say,
telling.
I would say, I know Marjorie for a long time. I would say the likelihood that she has any idea where she hid any of this is maybe
Well,
zero.
you know what? The beauty is the boxes are pretty big, so eventually you do find them, Jim.
Do you know what Zoe just said?
What?
It's hidden next to the Dustbuster charger and those AirPods
That's
from
right.
10 years ago.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you very much.
Nancy in Concord, thank you for
pretty good.
calling.
Hi.
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 I just wanted to add to the bringing out the silver conversation.
Yes.
You may not know, but tomorrow night is a Robert Burns night.
We did not know
I
that.
did not know that.
I do know.
A Scottish poet from 1780.
No, we know who he is, yeah.
And I am having a few people over, and I brought out all my silver,
Yeah.
my chandelier, my serving things, and my wedding china, and ironed my linens, and I'm so happy. It just made me so happy.
Nancy, that is a great call.
But wait a second. But you were saving it for a special occasion, right?
I am a little guilty of that, yes, because I have actually been polishing silver all week.
Yeah, it is a pain in the
But
neck
it feels
to polish.
great. Well, Nancy's
silver.
arguing the other side, and you say it beautifully, and obviously it's bringing you great joy. So I guess that's the other side of the equation. Thank you, Nancy. Enjoy Robert Burns night tomorrow night. A Cathay or Cassie says, given the next 4 years, pull it all out, eat it all, drink it all.
As you see the one from
That's a
Sheila
good
from
one.
Newton who says,
No.
my mother-in-law's nearly last words were, use the silver.
That is pretty funny.
So there you go. And one of these stories talks about how the mother had put all the fancy china they had in boxes under the house,
I didn't see
under the
that.
stairs.
Yeah.
And it went through 2 generations. And apparently she left a note in there saying how great the china was. And one of the kids felt bad and broke out all the china that went under the stairs in boxes.
You know what the
forever
note
and
actually
ever.
said that was beautiful?
What'd it
was in
say?
the Weepy. Hit by bus, use China. Such a moving
Well,
note.
you are on a roll today.
Well, those
Jim.
were the first 2 callers who said you could be dead tomorrow. Was
That's
there a
right.
reason to do this? And
That's
you could
right.
be dead tomorrow. Hopefully you won't be.
Here's another one about what we do too. You say things that don't fit you anymore. Either they're too big or they're too small. So it's anonymous texter says, I have a suit jacket I couldn't wear anymore. Lost weight, found the jacket, but the moths had found it first.
By the way, that's not the common experience. The common experience as you get older is you have a jacket you loved. The button can't even get within a foot of reaching the buttonhole on the other side. I think that's a more common experience. Use it. By the way, I have a lot of things like that too. Stuff that I bought that I really love, clothing, and I am going to save it in quotes for a special
Just in
occasion.
case.
And it's probably moth-ridden and that kind of thing.
Yeah, no.
Maybe some skinny guy in Somerville could wear it, but I'll tell you, it's not happening with me anytime soon.
Ken in Merrimack, New Hampshire, thanks for calling.
Hi, Ken. Thank you for calling.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
So I know we're talking about foods.
Talk
and
about whatever you want.
That how about using every room in the house? It's just my wife and I, and we have a dining room, and the only time we use the dining room is when special occasions.
Yeah.
Christmas, Thanksgiving, and, it's a nice room. And, I keep talking to my wife about we should go in there, but every day we eat at the counter, we take dinner there, and I'm like, this is a nice room. And you know what it's used for now? It's becoming a storage room. Whenever we buy something that we got to send back, it goes into the dining room. So I'm a big believer in, hey, you got a room in the house, use it.
I like your style, Ken. Use all the rooms in your house. Ken, thank you very much for an excellent call. Appreciate it.
This is from Teddy in North Attleboro. He's talking about all the families that had to evacuate in Los Angeles. Those horrible fires. They've lost everything. And his point is,
It's like the bus thing.
Yeah, enjoy it. while you have it, because you don't know how long you're going to have it.
Now, I'm going to tell a story. I'm not going to say who the individual is, so don't ask me.
Okay.
But this gets back to the caller saying use every room in your house. It's a variation on a theme.
I love this story.
You can't say, do not say who it was.
I won't.
Somebody I was close to many years ago went to visit them, and this woman, who I was very friendly with, had just married a guy who'd lived as a civil employee on a naval base his whole adult career, so he'd never had his own house. He marries this woman who I'm friendly with, and they move into an apartment. And about a year later, I go visit them. It's actually in, I think it was outside Syracuse, New York. And it's a nice little apartment. They're really proud and that sort of thing. And I see a door, and I say to the woman, I said, what's that the door to? She said, it's sort of like when you're in a hotel, it's a door to the next apartment. So, it's locked kind of thing. So obviously I'm curious. I turn the knob anyway. I open it. It's another room in their house that they were not aware that they had. And I turned to my friend, who's a very sweet person, and her reaction was, oh. And that was it. That was her reaction, yeah. It was, oh. I said, you have another room there that you didn't know you're paying for. It's another room in the house you didn't even know existed. And she goes, oh. So
why do I think you were not friendly with her for long?
No, it's not true. She's a wonderful person, but she did say, oh. And that was the end of it, and she had another room. I don't know if she's...
Haven't you ever had a dream you have another extra room in your house?
No.
I've had that dream a lot.
No.
I have another room, and I'm always disappointed.
I've had dreams about getting hit by a bus, though. That is fairly common.
Okay, Ellen from South Carolina. Thank you for calling.
Hello, Ellen. Hi.
Oh, here.
Hi.
Hi, what's up?
I'm a third-time caller, I think.
Love the first two. I hope this one's still good. Go ahead.
Hello?
Hello, yeah.
Yep, we're here.
We got you. Go.
Oh, yeah. I'm actually a Boston resident, but I winter in South Carolina.
Wow, I wish I wintered in South Carolina. Go ahead. So what are you calling about?
About the silverware?
Yeah, go ahead. Tell us about it.
I inherited my grandmother's silverware through my mother.
Sure.
But I got rid of it as soon as I could.
Why not? Why wouldn't you? Right. Why do we do that? I forgot. Why did we get rid of it as soon as we could there, Ellen?
Because I remember from the age of 6 on, every holiday, I had to polish that silverware.
That is very interesting, yeah.
It was a time-consuming job.
Time-consuming, yeah.
Very time-consuming.
Yeah.
So I gave it to my niece, who
What'd
was
she do
happy
with it?
to take it.
What'd she do with it?
She saved it, I think, for good,
For a special occasion.
Holidays.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is interesting. If you have a negative affiliation, as Ellen does, with having to have cleaned the silver,
that's why you had to
really
put it
don't
in
want
the
it
box.
near you anymore.
Right, but the more you use
Ellen,
it...
thank you. That was a good call.
People say that if you use it a lot, you don't have to polish it as much, and then you have to make sure you put it back in the box.
Why do you not
or
need
the
to polish
velvet
it
container.
as much?
I don't know, but you have to make sure you put it in. It gets tarnished really quickly.
Yeah, but can I tell you something? As much as that's torture, and I'm with Ellen, when you occasionally do, when I was younger...
Twinkle cleaner.
My mother, because she was one who only used it on special occasions, which we never had, by the way. But when we did, no, I don't mean that critically. We just didn't. But when we did, what rare occasion we did, I would shine the stuff while she was off at work. The thrill of blackened, crummy silver that all of a sudden
instant
gleams.
Gratification.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Now here's a word to the wise from a texter who says, "My mother used to say, use the nice things now, because if you don't, the second wife will."
That's a good one. And here's one, I think, for Marjorie. Marjorie's additional room is where all the things she can't find lives.
That's right.
That
My
is probably
dustbuster
true.
charger's in there, and so are the earbuds.
You probably have another couple of rooms in your house, too. I'll come
It's a
over.
recurring dream that I discover an extra
And
room.
what is the point? What happens in the dream?
I don't know, Jim.
Well, obviously, you had the dream, so you may know.
I'm not a dream interpreter. I don't know
but
what
happens? And when you discover you have an additional room, what happens next?
I just say, wow, I'm excited
you go,
to have
oh.
another. I go, ooh.
Oh, exactly.
Okay.
Oh, there's another room in my house.
Elizabeth from Arlington, thank you for calling.
Yeah, whatever. Hello, Elizabeth.
Hi, guys. I've been listening for years. I'm a first-time caller.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. Made my day. Go ahead.
Oh, well, so I'm 66 years old. When I was in my 20s, I was really tired of being a bridesmaid, never a bride.
Know the feeling,
I'm also really tired of buying wedding gifts with money I didn't have.
Good point.
And in my frustration, I decided, you know what? I'm going to do something about this. So I asked everybody in my life, especially my mother and father, to buy me place settings of Lennox china.
Okay.
So I went and registered for Lennox China just for me, and everyone in my family and all my friends proceeded to buy me place settings.
Wow.
I now have 14 place settings and a lot of the serving dishes, and I use them all the time. I've been using them for 40 years.
That is really good story, actually. That's great. That's great, actually.
That is a great.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thanks for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
Listen to this. Speaking of China, I use my 50-year-old Lennox China for every holiday and birthday. Put it in the dishwasher even though gold rim is dark and no one notices. I tell every person who comes into my house not to worry about breaking it because they're just saving my kids from throwing it all into a dumpster later. That's from Linda in Quincy.
Well, here's a really beautiful story from a friend of ours who was just here with Irene and Tracy. Her name is Jess. We're very close to her for a long time. I brought my own sterling silver dish for cocktail sauce to Marjorie's Christmas party a few years ago and forgot to take it. Marjorie put it in the dishwasher in capital letters and ruined it. I never told her until now.
Oh, that's terrible.
Whatever.
Oh, well.
That's really a painful story.
She's my daughter's best friend.
I know,
didn't know
not
I'd done
anymore,
that.
I don't think,
I didn't know I
actually.
ruined. I didn't know I ruined. But Zoe
It's
says.
clean, though, Jess. It's clean.
Yeah, it's clean.
Yeah.
Our staff, our coworker, staff member,
Your
whatever you
staff,
wanna call,
yes, your staff.
Finding a new room in your house, according to Zoe, means you are rediscovering a lost aspect of your personality.
What are you talking
It's
about?
more commonly experienced in dreams with women
Who
than
said
men.
that?
This is from Zoe.
What does she know about
the
this?
daughter of two she's a daughter of two developmental psychologists
is, actually,
and a reader of, I always mispronounce his
Jung.
name, Jung, thank you, and Freud.
Yeah.
Zoe, thank you very much. So there you go.
Now, here, one of my favorite things in the show, I sort of like
To
most
always
of the
ask
show,
Jared?
is to guess what Jared's response to our question is. Now, Jared he likes the nice things in life.
He does.
And you, because as we've said, you've been invited to his house many
I
times.
have.
I have never
It's
been
beautiful.
invited. So you'd have more insight into this. Does he use the good silver and the good plates, or does he save them?
Okay, I'm going to guess
Go ahead.
that when you have people over for dinner, you break out the nice china. If you
And
have
only
some.
then. Your point is
and
only
a silver
then.
if you have some, because lots of people don't have
No,
silver.
they don't.
They just have
Yep.
silver plate. But I'm betting you do.
I can't wait to hear the answer. What is the
You don't
answer,
use
Jared
cloth.
Bone?
You don't use paper napkins,
No,
do you?
are you kidding me?
No.
I knew it. And I'm so glad. If you told me you used paper napkins, I would have been devastated.
No,
I'm so glad
you've
it's a nice
been,
one.
you know.
Yes, it's gorgeous.
You've
I
not
tell
been, you don't know.
That's right. That's right. Jared has exquisite taste.
We've heard this 500
Okay, well,
times.
yeah, so
I really
you
don't want to
gotta-
hear
you
this
have to
anymore.
use
Don't be
the China.
jealous,
You
Jim.
have to use
Don't
the
be
China.
jealous.
So what is the good stuff you use that you use? What is the good stuff? What do you have that's like something
Well, I have
really
this
nice?
really nice China set. It was actually something I collected on eBay, to tell you the truth. It
Is
was
that-
when King, I think it was Edward VII, the one
Sure.
who ran away with Wallace Simpson.
Oh, yes.
So he was supposed to become king. He never was, but they produced this China for his coronation. They even stamped the date of the
Really?
coronation on the China, and of course it never happened. And it's a beautiful design, so I've bought it over the years on eBay.
Well, that's a pretty good story.
Yeah.
You know what?
Not really. Okay.
We should, and this is Scott from
no, it is.
Nashville who
What?
says
See, and I was just on the verge of inviting you over to have dinner on the King's China.
Okay, fine.
You know what the solution to all this is?
No.
Says Scott from New Hampshire?
No, I have no idea.
Have more special occasions. Isn't that nice?
That's lovely. Yeah.
We
Very
just talked
lovely.
about that on the culture show.
You did?
It's time to party more because
That's
people
right.
are just staying home. It's time to get out and gather.
Well, because the bus is turning the corner. That's why you should be partying hardy really fast. What do you? This is the Friday show, by the way, and it's at the library live. People can stay, more people can come. What's happening on this show here?
So we're going to be talking about the Oscar nominations, of course,
Oh.
which came out this week. And Jim, you do get executive producers-esque credit on the show
For
because
what?
we're going to be talking about The Brutalist and this controversy
the AI
over
thing?
the AI use
Thank you very
in
much.
that film.
I appreciate that.
And speaking of royalty, we're going to be talking about Prince Harry and his big settlement with Rupert Murdoch and taking on the tabloids. And,
Wait, there's also something about Prince Harry that if Trump discloses some file, he may get deported, or do you know anything about this thing?
Harry
Whatever. Okay,
deported?
forget it. No, what? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Is there anything else you
My
want to tell
goodness.
us? Or is that it?
His
He
microphone
does.
is ruined.
Okay, fine.
All
that
right.
was excellent, Jared. We'll be
Okay.
paying attention to that very closely. No, we will. We really will.
Okay, Jared
I'm
and the
serious.
Culture Show, the weekend review is going to be on right after we're through.
So when
and
you go
we're
to his
almost
house,
through.
is it fun there? I mean,
Yes, it's fun. It's fun. He serves the best liquor, the best hors d'oeuvres.
Does he ever say, does it ever come up in these things, why isn't Jim here? Do they ever, does that ever, never comes
Never.
up? Okay, fine.
Never.
Oh, no, I'm just curious.
Not
It's fine.
once.
Doesn't affect me at
Okay.
all. Go ahead.
Okay.
Fine with it. Go ahead.
Thank you for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Thanks to people that came down to the Boston Public
Thank you
Library.
all. We
Really
appreciate it.
it. You can check out, keep up with us 24/7 if you want to by way of our podcast. We have a TikTok page as well at Boston Public Radio. Monday, for a remote edition of Ask the Mayor with Michelle Wu at noon. She's going to Zoom in. We're also going to talk to Brian McGroy, the former editor of the Boston Globe, runs journalism now at BU. Elise Cherry from Blue Hub Capital about why her company, is too
They got a consumer exemption,
Yeah,
and
they
we've
did.
been critical, and she's going to come respond,
That's
which I think is great.
Our crew is Zoe Matthews, Aidan Coleman, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Laws, John the Claw Parker, Jamie Bologna, the BPL staff, Maddie Geyer, Brad Lewis, Patrick Lally, Juan Jose Cadena, our host of the Newsfeed Cafe.
What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Celebrity Series of Boston, presenting Counterpoint, a collaboration between pianist Conrad Tao and tap dancer Caleb Teicher, live at Boston Arts Academy on February 7th and 8th. Tickets at celebrityseries.org. Salt, fat, acid, heat, action. GBH has all the sizzling shows with all the seasonings. Catch your favorite cooking shows starting tomorrow at 11 and continuing all afternoon on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News, what matters to you?
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show. Coming up today on our Arts and Culture Week in Review, the Oscar nominations are out, and Emilia Perez breaks the record for the most Academy Award nominations for a foreign language film. Wicked and The Brutalist aren't far behind, with both films garnering 10 nods. We'll look at surprises, snubs, and the snoozers. From there, it's Netflix and Bill. The streaming service increases its monthly fees after reporting a record jump in new subscribers. And The Brutalist might be shining at the Oscars, but the light is going out on modern architecture, with President Trump's executive order mandating classical architecture for all federal buildings. Plus, it's a tabloid takedown, with Prince Harry settling a legal battle with Rupert Murdoch and company, winning an apology and an 8-figure sum. And the Doobie Brothers, George Clinton and Rodney Darkchild Jerkins, are among the Songwriter Hall of Fame 2025 inductees. All that and more now on The Culture Show.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Welcome to The Culture Show, live at the Boston Public Library. I'm Jared Bowen.
I'm Callie Crossley.
And I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. It's time for our Arts and Culture Week in Review. Here's what it sounded like.
The 2025 Oscar nominees have been announced.
Emilia Perez, nominees to be determined. Producers.
I'm still here. Nominees to be determined.
Guys, paperwork. Let's go. Come on.
Days before Academy Award season really kicks off, a frontrunner is sparking controversy. The editor of the film The Brutalist admitted to using artificial intelligence.
It's going to cost you more to watch the next season of Squid Game. Netflix announcing another round of price hikes.
Snoop Dogg is especially taking some hits, not just because he elected to perform at the crypto ball. Snoop Dogg's taking heat for what we saw him say about any potential performers back in 2017.
The legal showdown between Prince Harry and Fox News owner Rupert Murdoch's group of British tabloid newspapers was expected to be a bitter courtroom battle. But before it even began, the announcement of a settlement.
President Donald Trump has issued a new memorandum promoting the beautification of federal architecture. The memorandum calls for federal buildings to be visually identifiable as civic structures that respect traditional architectural heritage.
The Songwriters Hall of Fame. As the members of this exclusive club will tell you, there really is no greater honor. So here are this year's 6 new inductees to the Songwriters Hall of Fame.
Well, as you just heard, Emilia Perez leads the Oscar nominations, with The Brutalist and Wicked not far behind. But is The Brutalist already bruised amid revelations that its director used AI to finesse acting and designs in the film? We know how much America likes sequels, but how are we feeling about Netflix hiking its fees again? Speaking of sequels, President Trump is resurrecting his first-term efforts to mandate classical architecture for all federal buildings. Then, while we're pondering the president's aesthetics, we'll recap the inaugural looks from the hats to the hoodies. And the Songwriters Hall of Fame class of 2025 includes the Doobie Brothers, George Clinton, and Rodney Darkchild Jerkins. But first up, the Oscar nominations. Emilia Perez, Netflix's musical about a Mexican transgender drug lord, leads with 13 nominations. Wicked and The Brutalist follow with 10 nominations each. Well, what I really like about this year's nominations is that there is no clear frontrunner. It's not like Oppenheimer, years past, Avatar or Titanic, where you have so many nominations. It's clear they're going to sweep. But this is really widespread. We'll talk about The Brutalist in a little bit, why this may change the Oscar race, because we have the nominations, but will still move forward in deciding winners over the next month or so. But I think this is a pretty exciting year, although a lot of people complain that outside of Wicked, which is pretty much the biggest blockbuster in terms of what's out right now, not a lot of people know or have seen the films this year.
Well, especially Emilia Perez. I think for a lot of people, the Golden Globes was like, who, what, where? What are we talking about? Netflix? Nobody knew what it's about. And then you hear the plot summarized as you did, and people are like, huh? I don't understand.
I remember when I sat down to watch it on Netflix, just knowing that it was something I needed to be aware of, I thought, what? This is wild. There's no film like it.
You're like, is this the movie?
Wait,
exactly.
They're singing now?
Yeah. I know. And the fact that it topped out with so many nominations, and for as many people have not seen it, is really quite interesting, and the subject matter. And given the political times we're in, it's even more interesting because Carla Gascon, who is the first transgender actress to be nominated in Oscar, openly transgender person to be nominated in Oscar history, did a very powerful speech at the Golden Globes about inclusion and what this meant and blah, blah, blah. So it's very interesting.
Well, Edgar, before we get to you, let's hear a little bit of that speech. Here, Emilia Perez star Carla Sofia Gascon made a brief but powerful speech at the 82nd Golden Globes Awards. The Spanish-born actor made Golden Globes history, as Callie just mentioned, as the first transgender woman nominated for Best Female Actor. And she didn't win at the Golden Globes, but she did speak when the film won Best Picture for Musical or Comedy.
The light always wins over darkness. And I have a lot of things to say to you, because you can maybe put us in jail, you can beat us up, but you never can take away our soul, our existence, our identity. And I want to say to you, raise your voice, freedom, and say, I am who I am, not who you want. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we look at Emilia Perez, I think it's, as we sort of alluded to, it's interesting on its face just as a film in terms of, like, what is a musical, what's not a musical. It's very unusual for a musical to be buried inside of such a kind of drama and action movie as it sort of is. But another thing that I think is really interesting, I think this is a movie that people ought to see. And I think it's a movie you ought to see, and then also look at the very rich dialogue around this movie right now. I mean, there's been criticism in some camps, including within the trans community, about whether or not, you know, this is the way to tell a story like this. There's been criticism about, you know, in south of the border, about whether or not this is a kind of film that is, like, representing what's going on in Mexico in the right way. But the fact that that dialogue is happening, that's kind of the point of movies, right? And a free society. And I think with all that's going on, I think this is a moment where I think just generally it's worth watching this movie, because whether you like it or you don't, it is certainly interesting. It is certainly an achievement. And I think it's also bringing up a lot of people saying some really interesting things on a difficult situation. I think it's worth combing through it, having seen the movie.
Well, speaking of talent and why people should watch things, what I really fixated on this Oscar season was Isabella Rossellini in Conclave, another film which did very well because she's in that category, and we often talk about this, the people who don't win Oscars. You almost more want to be in that group because it includes Hitchcock and Cary Grant and an illustrious group of people throughout Hollywood history, and Isabella Rossellini is part of that group, although I suspect that may change. So she was nominated for Best Supporting Actress for Conclave, and what's interesting about that is she plays a nun who is kind of in the background watching this conclave happen, and she has very astute observations that come very infrequently in the film, so infrequently that her role is only 7 minutes and 51 seconds long, but that makes her actually the third shortest. You remember Judi Dench in Shakespeare in Love, she was just 5 minutes and 52 minutes. But I have to tell you, the only thing I remember from that film, other than the costumes, is Isabella Rossellini's performance. And I think we have a clip from that as well. Here she is as Sister Agnes in Conclave, and in this scene she exposes cardinal corruption.
Eminences, although we sisters are supposed to be invisible, God has nevertheless given us eyes and ears. I know what prompted the dean of the college to enter the Holy Father's rooms. He was concerned that the sister from my order that made that regrettable scene might have been brought to Rome with the deliberate intention of embarrassing a member of this conclave. His suspicions were correct. She was indeed here at the specific request of Cardinal Tremblay.
I have to say, in this film, it wasn't even the dialogue. I won't spoil it, but it was just one gesture that she gives in this film that I think should lock her the award. So really, maybe it should be given for 3 seconds of work. This will be tough because she's going up against Ariana Grande. However, I'd love to see her win, and it would actually make her the first part of the first mother-daughter team to win because her mother, Ingrid Bergman, won for Best Supporting Actress for Murder on the Orient Express.
Let me add that Viola Davis won for something like 10 minutes in the film Doubt. And boy, was that 10 minutes.
Well, it also,
against Meryl Streep.
Yeah. I mean, there is a long history of these like very powerful performances where the role is not really that much on screen. Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men is like what a lot of people remember. He's not in that film that much. Anthony Hopkins is actually not in Silence of the Lambs all that much.
You can't handle the truth.
Well, and I guess I can't. Yeah, I really like the actress in a supporting role. We were just talking about Amelia Perez, and Zoe Saldana is nominated. And her performance in that movie, whatever you think of it, is kind of astounding. I mean, she's singing, she's dancing, she's moving, she's acting.
Well,
I mean,
she got nominated. So.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Like, so that category is great. You know, speaking of Conclave, one of the things that caught my eye is the director of that film, Edward Berger, now for the second time has had one of his films lauded by the Academy with all kinds of nominations. This happened a couple years ago with All Quiet on the Western Front, but did not himself get a nomination.
Let me speak for John Chu. Excuse me, 10 nominations for Wicked and nothing for him?
Yep, there you
what,
go
did they
again.
just direct themselves? I mean, this is ridiculous.
So, I mean, it's sort of like it's an interesting case, although the writer on that movie who adapted Conclave, he did get nominated, and he's fantastic. He also did the adaptation on one of my favorite films of all time, which is Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
That's a good one.
From a few years ago. And he also was the one who adapted Wolf Hall for television. So he's a great writer. He got nominated. But again, the director, no nomination.
Okay, for those of us counting, there are 5 people of color who are nominated in the acting categories. Cynthia Erivo, Ariana Grande, Carla Sofia Gascon, Zoe Saldana, and Coleman Domingo. Also, Zoe Saldana and Selena Gomez both have credits on the 2 songs nominated. In the Oscar song category.
And Elton John with another song category nomination.
Right. He's going to win that, of course.
What do we make of it? Are we surprised a little bit that Dune did not get more love? I will say I am.
Yeah, I thought it was an incredible film.
I mean, it got a few nominations,
Speaking
but I am
of absent directors.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, totally. I'm a little bit surprised that it was not nominated for more. I mean, in terms of like the big movie experience, I mean, that to me is as
you can't
good as it
outbid
gets.
Wicked. I mean, I think we could pretty big.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
Different kind of big.
And before
Yeah.
we leave this, we should just talk a little bit about Demi Moore and also
Yes.
what this signals about the Golden Globe. So I guess I have to eat my hat on this one because over the past few years, I thought that the Golden Globe's prominence in Hollywood had certainly waned. We saw all the scandal within that program. We saw it leave its longtime home in broadcaster NBC. People weren't really paying attention to it, but I think it's changed everything. Amelia Perez, as you just mentioned, people watched the Golden Globes. They started paying attention. And I think very much the same thing happened for Demi Moore with her film, The Substance. She has a Best Actress nomination, and a lot of people will say it's because of what she signaled in her Golden Globe speech. Here's a little bit of her accepting the award for The Substance.
30 years ago, I had a producer tell me that I was a popcorn actress. And at that time, I made that mean that this wasn't something that I was allowed to have, that I could do movies that were successful, that made a lot of money, but that I couldn't be acknowledged. And I bought in, and I believed that. And that corroded me over time to the point where I thought a few years ago that maybe this was it. And as I was at kind of a low point, I had this magical, bold, courageous, out of the box, absolutely bonkers script come across my desk called The Substance. And the universe told me that you're not done.
And now her peers are certainly
Yeah.
saying the same thing, but that's a tough category.
It
People are
is.
saying she's a front runner, but she also goes up against, of course, Cynthia Erivo and Carla Sofia Gascon. And so this will be an
that is a
interesting
very
one
stacked
to
category.
watch.
And the woman who did I Am Here, I'm Still Here.
Yeah.
She won the Golden Globes.
Fernanda
Yes,
Torres,
right.
yeah,
Mhm,
exactly.
mhm.
Well, a big ripple in the Oscar nominations this week. There's backlash to The Brutalist amid revelations that an editor used AI to improve the Hungarian accents from actors Adrian Brody and Felicity Jones in their now Oscar-nominated performances. Filmmakers also used AI to craft some of the designs in the film. So this is where we understand even more now, the degree to which AI can enter. So basically, this editor stepped forward in an interview only recently, not before nomination time, not before the film actually came out, and said that because he is Hungarian, this editor, he wanted to help and improve some of the dialect. And so he said it wasn't considerable work. They were changing words and vowels here and there. However, it was enough of it that they couldn't do it piece by piece, and so they used an AI software, which has also been used for other films, to go and finesse that language. And so now there is this debate in Hollywood. If you use AI to enhance and or correct your performance, is that problematic?
We should also note that Amelia Perez enhanced Carla Gascon's singing by blending it with a French singer, Camille. They said to add some weight to her voice. So AI was used in that. So both of them are, as we've just said, gotten a lot of nominations. And does that discount them? I don't know. I think what I wanted to pay attention to, I went back to say, what did that contract say about AI after all of the Hollywood strikes? And it said that they were not supposed to be they didn't have to have digital replicas of their likenesses. Now, Rolling Stone did a piece last July and said what has happened, however, is that a lot of people are being pressured to sign a contract that says it's okay if you want to do digital replicas. And in both of these instances, I consider that to be digital replicas. Not a lot, but it is. And those people who said, no, I will not sign the contract, have lost work.
And from speaking of,
Yes.
when I see Adrian Brody and Felicity Jones consented to the manipulation of their
I mean,
performances.
honestly, I have zero problem with this use of AI in this case. I mean, we were just talking about how long have we been hearing any musical that's out there using auto-tune. It's not really that different, to sort of, if you're altering the accent a little bit, to me that's a little bit like altering the pitch in a singing voice, which happens all of the time. Kind of futzing with the sets a little bit. To me, the fact of the matter is like AI is a tool. It's here, just like we use computers and CGI to enhance movies. It is at our disposal, and whether we like it or not, it's here. I think, like with anything, the devil's going to be in the details. This may be a little bit more of a powerful tool, but I think we do need to continue to draw a distinction between the use of AI to, say, generate whole cloth something, which is to say, tell AI to write me the story, and the dialogue and put the film together for me. AI, to a certain extent, can do that. That is different than it being used in the hands of a director or a crew to say, like, we're going to kind of clean the fine edges here, utilizing this tool under direction from a human mind. To me, those are two very different things. I agree with you, Callie. You got to be careful in how much power you're giving each person along the step of the way, because this tool does have the potential to put a lot of people out of work. But I don't know. I just don't have a problem with it.
I think it's already putting people out of work. I would argue that without auto-tune, people are usually aware of it, and you can usually tell. This, I wouldn't know unless you told me.
See, that's where the usually word that you use.
Yes.
This is where I think where I've arrived on this is I'm not sure I find it too problematic, although it's a slippery slope.
Yep.
Because, so they're speaking in Hungarian. I, as a primarily English speaker, or basically only English speaker, am not going to. I guess those 4 years of French don't count. My apologies, Madame Marie. Je regrette. So I didn't understand. I wouldn't notice the difference. And it's not like they're changing the overarching tone of that performance. However, I think we've arrived at the point that if you're using AI in a film, I want to know, have a disclaimer of some sort.
Right.
AI generation was used in this film. And interestingly, for the recent Hugh Grant film Heretic, they had a disclaimer at the end saying, FYI, no AI-generated software was used in the making of this film. I think we need to know because it will help us understand where we are better.
And I think it matters if we're talking about awards now. I think people who are voting should know that. And you can decide how you feel about that.
Disclosure, absolutely on the disclosure front. But the fact of the matter is like the idea of putting something on the screen, right, that is not reality is as old as the movies themselves. The special effects, have been a part of the film.
I would argue we
but
have
do
known.
you? I mean, was there disclosure in the early years that said they weren't really on this train, that, like that they're actually on a sound
But
stage?
you could tell. That's what
I
I'm
don't know.
saying,
It's a little bit like my mom always used to say. I'd be like, you can always tell when someone had plastic surgery. And she's like, no, you can only tell when the plastic surgery has not been done well.
That's exactly true. Why are you looking at me, Edgar?
Well, I'm just going to say, maybe for me, there is a difference between enhancing Carla Gascon's voice without telling me.
Yeah, that's a big one.
I
agree. That's a big one, though. That's a huge one, because this is part musical, and if we didn't know that going in...
That's correct.
I mean, Russell Crowe in that Les Miserables,
I'm okay if
they're
you tell
enhancing
me.
his voice.
You didn't tell me, and this
not
only
enough.
came out...
I mean, also true, not enough.
This only came out after, people leaked it or whatever. It wasn't.
That is the most.
It was not.
That is the most problematic case of this. Is that nobody said anything.
And by the way, Denzel got snubbed, but I forgot to say that.
I think he's just fine though.
Yeah, I think he'll be okay. Did he really lose his arm in that movie? All right. Well, next.
Spoiler alert.
Yes, sorry. Whoops. Sorry.
They weren't actually in Rome.
Meanwhile, speaking of what's streaming right now, because Gladiator 2 is streaming, subscribers are streaming mad as Netflix raises monthly fees again, and that's on the heels of record growth. 19 million new subscribers last quarter, giving them 302 million subscribers globally. But despite that, they're adding price hikes that will make subscriptions now topping out at about $25 per month. All right, where I stand on this is if you can provide the content that's worth $25 a month, okay. But if I look at all the streaming services that I subscribe to, Apple and Max, and even Paramount now, Paramount Plus with Showtime, it's hard to keep track of all the all of this. Netflix is at the bottom of the rung for me. The caliber of programming just doesn't measure up to what Apple and Max and to some degree what Paramount are doing. I don't know how they can justify this, especially after they're clearly raking in the revenue.
Well, I would agree with you that they have some good bad movies. That's just the kind of stuff I like to watch. And also they have Bridgerton, so there you go.
Yeah, this is your fault.
Yes, but here's the thing. They are not adhering to the streaming rules, and that's why I am angry. Drop the whole season. That's the reason why I hate you. If you're not going to drop the whole season, what am I doing here? And the whole point, they're going toward ad. I don't want any ads, so you're making me, from my little standard plan, go up because I don't want the ads. That's the whole point of streaming. If I wanted ads, I'd watch regular TV, regular cable, whatever the hell it is. I don't want that. So they're not holding up their end of the bargain. And here's the final thing that ticks me off.
Preach, Callie, preach.
Sports. Now, I don't want sports at all. I don't want sports. Why am I paying for sports?
And we are.
We are paying for sports. I don't want it. If you have a plan, Netflix, listen to me, that does not have sports, that you want to hike up so I get a better
So wait, you would pay extra to not have
I
sports?
would pay extra for drop the whole season and leave the ads out. Now you got me, and no sports.
I'm totally with you. When I saw that was the reason, because actually, yeah, now we're getting really fired up.
Wow.
The Mike Tyson fight, they're citing that as one of the examples. Look at what we're doing with sports. Well, yeah, half the people couldn't watch it because there were so many streaming glitches.
Yes.
So you're going to charge people for things that you can't even stream, and do what everybody else is doing and give me the option to have that package, or give me a $5 discount.
So I don't think it is. I don't think it is a coincidence that this year, probably one of the biggest sort of tentpole projects of Netflix over the last 5 to 7 years has been Stranger Things. The final season of Stranger Things will drop this year, so the prices have gone up when people are going to want to make sure, even if they've gone away, that they can come back and get that last season.
We're paying those kids' salaries.
Yeah, I mean, kind of, yeah. But here's an interesting thing, and if you, according to the FCC, in 2010, the cost of a basic cable package was about $55, $54.44. Today, if you choose with ads, this is the cheapest bundle, and you got Netflix, Hulu, Disney, Paramount, Peacock, and Prime Video, which is probably going to get you not anywhere near, by the way, the content you would have gotten in a basic cable package, but enough that you can browse. It's about the same price. We are in this slow motion thing where we are recreating a worse version of cable.
That's
like,
right.
That is essentially what is happening, and we're going to end up paying more for it.
Well, a lot of people
so
have
what
dropped.
the heck are we
a lot
doing?
of people have cord cut and dropped.
Well, this is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
So if you've completely dropped cable and you get streaming services to give you an approximation of what cable used to do, you're paying the same amount. You're still seeing ads.
And I would argue that the only reason that Netflix has been able to be as successful as it is because it was one of the original, and people
they were
are
out to a head
lazy
start.
and trying not to, because I know in my family we're trying to figure out which one of these are we dropping, because they haven't been very friendly to family plans, and that's annoying to me too. And Netflix started that. So Netflix, you're on a bubble with me right now, because I could do that thing where you just tune in for a couple of months and get Bridgerton, because it's going to take you all year to drop the whole season, and then jump out. And then what did that gain you?
The other thing here is that they knew that they were getting their 15% increase that they saw over year that exceeded expectations.
Yes.
So they're already very much in the black, and we do know the business model of this. All of these streaming companies spent a lot of money to build these up. It was basically building new studios from the ground, and now we're having to pay for it.
Yes.
The other thing that I don't like is what we talked about earlier, the memory sharing thing, where you take a little clip of something you loved and you share with everybody else. So now they're charging us more, and they're making us work for them. Like, none of this model works. I think it's really disrespectful, and I think, Callie, to your point, not only do people need to scrutinize this more, but they also, as I said at the beginning, they need to start scrutinizing the programming more. That's not to say that all of the programming is not great, but a lot of it isn't great right now.
No, I would agree with you. It's not. See, but it's my level of bad movie, which I'm happy to turn on.
I mean, but it must be said that the model's going to work so long as people pay for it, right? It's one thing to complain, but if people by the thousands and the tens of thousands, the hundreds of thousands stop their subscriptions, you could argue the price will come down.
All right, well, coming up, President Trump mandates the beautification of America with an executive order and an assault on modern architecture. That and more next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
I'm Judy Ewell in for Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, Carmen Ortiz, the former U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts, is sharing her thoughts on the DOJ's directive on investigations into state and local officials who don't comply with federal immigration authorities. A portion of the Red Line is shutting down this weekend. The T says changes to its signal system will lead to faster service. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Subaru of New England. This winter, the all-wheel drive 2025 Subaru Forester is committed to keeping your loved ones safe on snowy roads. You can find your Subaru retailer at SubaruofNewEngland.com. and the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from medical bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have any unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov. And Boston Medical Center, committed to delivering medical excellence that empowers all patients. Learn more about how BMC's team of experts is rewriting healthcare for cancer, sickle cell, and beyond at bmc.org.
Wonder. Watch. Learn something new. The Curiosity Desk, finding hidden answers to everyday questions. Now on the GBH News YouTube channel at youtube.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to The Culture Show. I'm Jared Bowen, live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. I'm joined by co-hosts Callie Crossley and Edgar B. Horwick III. If you're just tuning in, it's our Arts and Culture Week in Review. We're listening to God Save the King, because there is no God Save the Prince. No matter, Harry is taking pretty good care of himself, especially this week, in a legal face-off with Rupert Murdoch. So this, of course, has been in the works for a really, really long time, going back to his mother, and this came to the fore this week as well. Prince Harry has been going after the tabloids, notably those owned by Rupert Murdoch, for his invasions of privacy, the private eye investigations, tapping phones, bugging, and of course everything they did to his mother, Princess Diana. Well, this week it was all settled. We really don't know much other than that he got an 8-figure settlement and an apology.
A big apology. NGN offers a full and unequivocal apology to the Duke of Sussex for the phone hacking, surveillance, and misuse of private information by journalists and private investigators instructed by them at the News of the World. That's huge.
It's huge. And also, I think, as you mentioned, I think one of the most critical things here is not only did they have to apologize, they apologized to him, they also apologized for what they did to his mother what they did to him when he was a child, which I think is probably a big motivating factor in this for him.
This goes back to 1996, by the way. And he hung in there, and people were saying, you're never going to win this. This is crazy. You are such a public figure. It's never going to happen. And he didn't care. I've heard some people in discussing this say, well, the cost of doing all of this, he didn't come out winning anything in the end. I say, yes, he did.
Actually, I'm not so sure about that. I'm in that category of wondering what's been achieved here. So, yes, he got, again, an 8-figure settlement. That's a lot of money. He got an apology. That's big because Rupert Murdoch has never done that.
Yeah.
However, what he didn't get were the internal machinations of who was responsible for doing this, because Rebecca Brooks, who basically was accused of running a criminal enterprise and being the editor of these tabloid newspapers, is still a chief executive within the Murdoch news media empire. We don't know what she did. We don't fully know the tactics. And so they never really disclosed everything because this didn't go to trial. This, like many, this was settled on the eve of trial. And Hugh Grant was another very notable victim of the Rupert Murdoch invasion tactics, and he also settled because the laws are different in Britain, that if you lose, you're subject to actually paying legal fees for both parties. So, and I guess that's what people probably mean when they say that he could have lost big, so he didn't necessarily win big. But I read through the stories thinking, I still feel like I don't know anything.
But how do we know he doesn't know? We don't know.
Well, because they never had to. They didn't have to adjudicate it in court.
They have to reveal it, but I'm saying part of the deal could be that he knows what they did.
I didn't see that, but I think normally when this would happen, especially if it goes to trial, then everything is put out before you. And I think that's another component of this too, by the way, is that clearly they gained a lot of information. Probably not all of it made it into the newspapers. So if this goes into discovery, I'm sure Hugh Grant, Prince Harry still have things that they don't want any of us to know.
Well, I'm saying, so since it didn't go to trial, I don't know that wasn't, he didn't get something out. Anyway, I think he came out just fine, and it makes a point to the larger community about chasing people this way.
Yeah, I mean, and speaking of Netflix, I mean, given how his Netflix stuff has resonated with the audience, it's probably good that he got some money because he's not making quite what he made from Netflix moving forward.
But we're paying some of that because they paid, remember, they paid Netflix paid Harry and Meghan $100 million for their production.
That's our money.
Her show is coming on. It just got postponed.
For how long?
Well, listen now, people. I don't run Netflix.
Well, wait a minute. When her show comes out, are all the episodes dropping at once, or are they coming out one
Probably
week at a
not,
time,
which
Callie?
brings me back to my point. I don't care in her case, but all right.
Well, let's move on now. And in fact, Harry's father, King Charles, is a known stickler for traditional architecture. Now, President Trump may be taking his royal cues. The new president has already issued an executive order mandating that federal buildings be of classical design. And we're going to put some of the classical design that we know in Washington, D.C. up on our monitors here in the Boston Public Library. If you're visiting with us today, we'll also have it on our YouTube stream. Just log on to YouTube to watch The Culture Show stream live from here at the library. But this is actually a repeat of what Donald Trump did at the end of his first term, when he did the same thing, basically mandating that there be a review of all architecture. What we're looking at now is actually the brutalist style. This is the
that's not classical.
This is the J. Edgar Hoover building in Washington, D.C., which is in such disrepair that they plan on moving it maybe to Maryland. Donald Trump wants to keep it in Washington, D.C., but he definitely does not want the style that we're looking at right now. He wants it to be more classical, neoclassical, Greek revival, Gothic maybe, but nothing contemporary, nothing like brutalism. And so he's trying to set an agenda for our nation's aesthetic.
So it's fascinating to me because, as we've discussed on Inauguration Day, to our knowledge, we didn't know that he had any kind of cultural or artistic preferences. So this is fairly interesting. I would look at the work of his own places. They don't have this kind of style. So where did this come from? I mean, I think that's an interesting
every
story.
federal building does have to have a golden toilet. That is part of
Yes,
the,
that's yeah.
the
That's, I think that's from
Somebody's
the first
gonna
term,
believe
yeah.
you. That's not true. So I'm really curious. Like, where does this come from? I think that's a good story, actually, for somebody to investigate why he feels that way. But there is a monetary piece to this, and that is a part of his directive to make people go back into the office has to do with the fact that there's a lot of unused space, and so there's a lot of discussion about what to do with the unused space in some buildings. That made more attention paid to, well, how will we do that, and by the way, what are we going to do for future buildings, and therefore this is where this came from. Ostensibly, but I don't know where it comes from him personally.
Yeah, you know what though? I actually, when I look at this, this feels very in character for him. I know what you're saying, and we did talk last week about the fact that he doesn't seem to have preference in that way, but he does have a long history of, he sort of has this thing where, you know, when he talks about like a nominee, for example, right? He's like, well, that person, they look like they would be the nominee, right? He has this sense that seems to be frozen in time that like a cop ought to look like this, and like a politician ought to look like that, and a government building ought to look like this, right? This idea that there is some sort of one ideal from some frozen moment in time in his world, which is probably, it seems, largely influenced by television, you know. And so the idea that, to me, this seems very much in line with the way he operates. It's, you know.
It just throws me off that I don't see that in any of his own buildings, not the casinos, not the.
Well, because he's making casinos, he's not making government buildings. So a casino ought to have gold and ought to look like how his casinos look.
You may very well be right.
I went back. It's funny that talk about this because I went back to look at images today of Trump Tower in New York City to remind myself of what that architecture is like. It is a somewhat interesting building. It's actually a very sleek modernist building.
Yep.
It has that tiered steps where they have trees on top of them, which I think is such an interesting design device, which I kind of appreciate. Otherwise, it's imposing. Maybe that strikes the character. So I have to say that I think this is actually worth exploring. If you look at the history of the design of Washington, Thomas Jefferson had so much to do with that. He is a known architect, of course, also designed the campus of UVA and Monticello, and had classical visions when he was designing our buildings in Washington. I know when I go to Washington, especially when you're driving at night, all those buildings are lit up, and it's gorgeous. Now, it's not to say that this should carry through all times, but I think there is a value in talking about what you're trying to convey. The critics are also saying, no, this is what the fascists also do. They design buildings that are supposed to be deliberately imposing, and this is what he's trying to do as an authoritarian. I don't know. I think there is that discussion, especially even here in Boston. If you look at, we have restrictions about building codes and what it's like on Beacon Hill and Back Bay with our historic structures. So this is worthy of conversation.
I want to circle back to the Thomas Jefferson, because anybody who's seen Hamilton knows that he came back from France. He's heavily influenced by the French. And Also, we generally are heavily influenced by all the folk who have come. So it's not Americans so much, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, we have some heavy influence. And to your point, if Thomas Jefferson left his imprint, he brought some France with him, okay?
Well,
and so that's traditional now, quote unquote. I am using air quotes now.
For sure.
And I don't know that Donald Trump knows that. I just, that's what's interesting to me.
I think there's two things here. One, I totally hear what you're saying, Jared, and you know, also, you know, that idea that, you know, the American democracy thing was looking back to ancient Rome and to Greece and the temples there, and that's kind of like part of the look of it too. But there is the mandating all federal buildings in Washington D.C. or saying Washington D.C. or a section of Washington D.C. ought to look a certain way. I'm kind of okay with that as well. But the all federal buildings thing is different because federal buildings exist all across the country and in other U.S. territories. I mean, I think about a building, like, I don't know if you've seen it, but like the federal courthouse in Austin, Texas is this kind of cool, modern, neat-looking building. There's the federal building in San Francisco, which I think went up in 2007. Also kind of a fairly interesting, sleek, modern thing. I think that's good. And they probably, you know, the buildings have to also reflect the place where they are, whether it's a federal building or not. So I think there is a distinction that I have in my mind between what we're doing in a particular spot in Washington, D.C. versus doing outside of Washington, D.C. And I don't like the idea of having one style across both of those places.
And stunting all the growth so that you don't have architects designing new buildings. And I'm also mindful of the Museum of the American Indian and the Museum of, I always bungle the title, the Museum of African American, history, which is a completely
fabulous
different design, but also is situated well among the Smithsonian museums and the rest of the buildings in the Capitol, because I think a lot of thought was given by those architects about how do you make your own design, but how do you also be a good neighbor architecturally and sit well together. So I do think it's a great conversation, but no, it shouldn't stop with everything needs to be neoclassical.
I find myself wondering what he thinks of the Cybertruck, because his buddy Elon Musk made a real modern-looking car, and so like, was Trump going to mandate that you can't make cars like that? I don't know.
I find myself wondering at this little fine print that says, though there's supposed to be ways to integrate community feedback into design plans. We'll see.
We'll be following this because he wants everything to go directly before him. No project can now move. According to this executive order, no project can move forward without going before him, whether it's in Tulsa or it's in downtown Washington. We're listening to Snoop Dogg performing at the Crypto Ball, part of the inaugural festivities in Washington. We'll return to that controversy in a moment, but first, on President Trump's first day in office, he promised to drill baby drill. He granted a blanket pardon to virtually all of the January 6th defendants, and he vowed to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. And still, that was all virtually secondary to Melania Trump's inauguration hat and the memes rebranding her as the Hamburglar, Carmen Sandiego, and a human representation of the Pizza Hut logo. Again, if you're watching our show on the YouTube live stream right now, you'll see, of course, the outfit that we're talking about, and one, frankly, I defend. I thought she had a fabulous look.
I'm kind of with you, Jared.
At the inauguration, I think it signaled who she is. She was very buttoned up. She was tightened up. She had the brim of that hat made so wide that her husband couldn't kiss her. You kind of think she was meeting with the designer, wider. And I think that's a reflection of who she was certainly as First Lady the first time, where we didn't see a lot of her. She wasn't entirely accessible, and we didn't see much of her on the campaign trail. She is a former model. She's very composed. I thought it was an interesting and great look.
I don't know if it's a great look, but I appreciate the fact that it fit the occasion. And we all know that she does not do anything sort of half. So she thought about this with, spend some time thinking about it. And the hat shaded her eyes, so if she didn't want to have to deal with a lot of people perusing her and making a comment in their minds or out loud, it worked.
Yeah, I think the shading her eyes thing was very intentional and a big part of it.
And it looked dignified.
Yeah, I mean, it is also, it's interesting when you compare that to what she looked like in the first inauguration, which was a little bit, kind of more like what I think people thought of as like a Jackie O kind of look, right? And I think about, we tend to construct things in a narrative way in our heads, and I think about films where costumes are often used to show the development or the change of a character over time. And as I think about like what she looked like at the first inauguration and what she looked like at this inauguration, that narrative kind of comes into my mind about like what is this signaling about where we're at now and where we're going to be for the next 4 years.
Well, not everyone is as evolved as us, because here's what the late night TV hosts had to say about her sartorial choices.
After this, we're going to play Who Wore It Better, me, Melania, or the Hamburglar.
Trump actually got involved in Melania's outfit for this ceremony. A lot of people are talking about it. He told her he thought it would be super hot if she dressed like a goth Al Capone.
Melania Trump made a real statement with her look. That statement, I am Carmen Sandiego.
We found Carmen Sandiego.
People weren't sure if she was there for the inauguration or to kill Indiana Jones.
That's just so not
No, that
nice.
one's good. That one's at least a little clever.
It was clever and funny. But frankly, the one I had the problem with was Senator John Fetterman wearing shorts and a hooded sweatshirt.
AKA his uniform.
To a presidential inauguration.
I mean, so inappropriate. And, you know, I like John Fetterman. Be your own guy, but this is inappropriate. At some point, you have to put on long pants. At some point. I know he has some. I know he has some. This was the moment to do it. Or maybe you don't go. I mean, it just was, I don't know what statement he was trying to make, but that's, you know. And remember, there was a sanction against him wearing this inside, doing his job, and he fought against it. And I can't remember if he won or not, but there you have it. But that wasn't my big
I was going to
thing.
say, Kelly, is there anything else?
Yes, I'd like to talk about Lauren Sanchez.
Speaking of people forgetting clothes at home.
Oh, my God. Somebody described her Alexander McQueen suit, which means expensive, is that she opted out of a blouse. They tried to call it a bustier. She is wearing a white lace bra. Whitney Cummings, who is a great comedian, said it's Bachelor in Paradise meets Love is Blind energy. I say it's Beverly Hills Housewife up in the club energy. Are you kidding? This is not what you wear to an inauguration. Now, people have been critical of her across the board about what she wore to the inaugural balls. On those, I don't agree. Do you, boo, at the balls. That's a ball. Do whatever you want to do. But as Megyn Kelly, and I am not one to quote Megyn Kelly says, no one should be talking about your breasts.
Okay, so here's a question for you,
Let me just
Callie.
point out for people who haven't seen it yet, it's on streaming on our YouTube, and we also have the one picture where Mark Zuckerberg is not looking at
right, her breasts.
Yeah. So, and I say this with love because I'm from Pennsylvania. So let's call Fetterman's look Pennsylvania chic. Okay.
Okay.
And let's take this look. Who do you vote off the island for what they wore if you have to pick one of them? Is
Lauren
it Fetterman
Sanchez.
or
Oh,
her?
no, Lauren Sanchez.
Oh, so she's worse than him showing up in shorts.
Yes.
And
Yes. This is not a bustier. This is a bra. No. I'm sorry.
It's a nice bra,
And
right?
you know what Whitney Cummings said, which is so true? She said, I'm sure she paid $1 billion for this because this is really expensive. But she says, no, white lace, tacky. She said, it looks like you got it from Temu. Come on. I'm quoting Whitney Cummings. I'm with her on that. And she's a nice-looking woman. You don't have to do this.
All right.
You know, use some taste. Somebody help her. She doesn't have any girlfriends to say, no, don't wear that.
Yeah, now we're using words I don't even know. So, should we slide over to Snoop now?
Yes.
I mean, we started this segment with a little bit of Snoop performing, which is in big contrast to remarks he made back in 2017. Here are some newly resurfaced remarks. We had to do a lot. Just be prepared. Here's a warning. We did a lot of bleeping here. But the remarks he made on Instagram about musicians performing for Donald Trump's first inauguration, you know, the first one before he performed in this one.
So ain't nobody gonna perform for Donald Trump, huh? Which one of you gonna be the first one to do it? I'm waiting. I'm gonna roast the out one of you Uncle Tom ass for doing it. Which one of you is gonna do it first? I was the one that performs for himself.
Wow.
So, and of course, he performed at the Crypto Ball and said it was an honor to perform at a presidential inauguration, making the distinction it wasn't a campaign event, but he wasn't making that distinction in 2017.
No, he wasn't. I mean, that's just BS. He just, you know, you wanted to perform at the inaugural ball, then didn't have enough, you know what, to stand up and say, I wanted to perform and I like the check. You know what I mean? By the way, just to remind people, the inauguration balls and all of the activities are not paid for by us. These are private funds that are raised to pay for this. So he got a big check for that. My observation is, I guess nobody can have enough money because the guy is everywhere.
Yeah.
And every endorsement possible. I just don't know why he needed to do this. But if you want to do it, then stand up and say, yeah, I did it and I changed my mind, or whatever you did. I just think it's disgusting that you went from there to here and no comment at all, and like you're gaslighting us,
Yeah, I mean, I also just think about all of the goodwill he built up, kind of becoming America's sweetheart during the Olympics, and just the broad appeal that he showed there. And then to your point, whether it is the climate of the times, whether it should be or not. It is a divisive, to a certain extent, act. You're planting a flag in the ground, whether you want to be or not, when you're performing at these things right now in the current political climate that we're in. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I do know, and I think it's sad, and a lot of people have dropped his music and whatever. I mean, he makes most of his money, I think, on endorsements.
I would say this, something I do know is I would pay money for a one-on-one interview, you interviewing Snoop and taking the hard questions to him. That I would pay to listen to.
I would be happy to do that. You can call that Hot Ones too.
Well, and I'll just say the one thing that troubles me is, okay, fine, if you want to say we're going to have a coming together, and I'm separating this out from the campaign, and this is part of our nation's history to be participating in this, but then to not talk about it when you spoke so loudly
forcefully,
and forcefully, some would argue offensively about it the first time, come back and talk about it. Well, coming up, the Songwriter Hall of Fame inducts a new class which includes funk legend George Clinton. That's on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
A fragile ceasefire is holding between Hamas and Israel, and many people in Gaza are trying to get home, only to find home no longer exists.
Where are the houses? Where are the streets? Where is the trees? Where is the animals? Where is the people we love?
The challenges ahead as Gaza starts to pick up the pieces. That story next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And H&H, the Handel and Haydn Society. Love Gone Wrong Never Sounded So Right, with 3 passionate works by Handel. February 7th and 9th at NEC's Jordan Hall. Tickets at handelandhaydn.org. And the Museum of Science, the Heart of New England. Their giant screen production is narrated by Uzo Aduba and Mindy Kaling. You can see it now in the Mugar Omni Theater. Tickets and more information at mos.org. GBH 89.7 listeners prefer to purchase from companies that sponsor GBH. Become a corporate sponsor today. Packages can include audio, video, digital, and events. Learn more at gbh.org/sponsorship.
Why is college tuition so high? Why are there so many fees? And why won't my credits transfer? If you've ever had any of these questions, we're answering them on our podcast, College Uncovered. Find it wherever you listen to podcasts.
Journalist, our president had to introduce former President Bill Clinton, and she said, before you, the only Clinton I knew was George Clinton. So that's the cultural impact that he's had. He was always a little weird, he's kind of woo-woo funk, if you will, but so enjoyable, great dance music. You put on any of his stuff now, and people will dance. Love it.
Well, here's mine. We're going to go back. I'm leaving you for last because you have a different take, I think, Edgar. So we're going back to the 90s for mine.
I know you say that I am assuming things. Something's going down, that's the way it seems. Shouldn't be no reason why you acting strange. Nobody's holding you back from me. 'Cause I know how you used to do. That was Destiny's Child with their 1999 classic Say My Name, written by Rodney Darkchild Jerkins. And this is such a great story, too, about a kid who grew up in the church. He was playing piano at age 5, a multi-instrumental artist by age 10, clearly a prodigy, clearly having a great capacity for songwriting. It was huge in the R&B world with Whitney Houston, Janet Jackson, Mary J. Blige, Toni Braxton, not to mention all of these others like Lady Gaga, Britney Spears, Justin Bieber. It just goes on and on and on. And this is somebody who still wants to help young songwriters rise up. What a great choice, because he's a great man in addition to being an extraordinary talent.
Yeah, and I love to see the Songwriters Hall of Fame. I mean, one of the reasons why I like this is because people like him who are in the background writing songs and not performing them continue to get recognized. I think that's important because they're a big part of the industry.
So what's your choice?
So my choice is if I'm feeling generous, I would say it's slightly eyebrow raising. If I'm feeling less generous, I would say it's an absolute travesty. But this is Mike Love, he of the Beach Boys, the non-Wilson brother of the Beach Boys, the non-Brian Wilson, who's the person who really wrote the songs Beach Boy and was already in the Songwriters Hall of Fame a long time ago. Listen, Mike Love did, I think it is clear, help a little bit with some of the songwriting, especially early on. But the thing is like Brian Wilson and Mike Love are not Rodgers and Hart. They are not Lennon and McCartney. They are not Lieber and Stoll. They are not Elton John and Bernie Taupin.
Or Salt and Pepper.
Or Salt and Pepper. I mean, let's look at it this way. Paul Simon is in the Songwriters Hall of Fame. And Art Garfunkel is not, and that's probably correct. So that's probably correct. And in this case, I mean, the other thing is, like, Mike Love, I mean, listen, again, his contributions, absolutely there. Cool singer, if that's your style, okay, all right, singer. But as a songwriter, I don't think, and do we have some of his solo? This is what he sounds like solo. This is one that he wrote on his own without Brian Wilson.
Tropical seas with a summer warm breeze, sailing to romantic eyes. So I didn't know that AI could be inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame.
Oh, that is not good.
He's also quite unlike. I mean, he got into a lot of legal battles to try to get some of to get what he saw as rightfully established as a person who can be credited with some of these songs. He also wrested the Beach Boys name away from the rest of the Beach Boys, and he kind of tours with a bunch of other people as the Beach Boys. Just kind of not cool. Not cool.
No. And there's so many other
We're barreling through the show now, which means it's time for our lightning round. That was that signal. Kelly, these are the stories that have, of course, caught our attention this week. What's yours?
The announcement that Bridgerton is filming season 4. Ooh. We won't get it until 2026, sadly, because as the showrunner says, you want the quality, you want the thing.
Hugely popular the world over in his day. In fact, there's a Robert Burns statue here, not to a couple of blocks from the library here. But anyway, they do these Burns nights where they read his poetry, and there's usually bagpipers, and they eat haggis, which is a traditional Scottish dish. And there's a bunch happening around here. There's stuff at the Haven in JP, Holliston, Gloucester, and overall have Burns nights this weekend. The Crystal Ballroom in Somerville tonight. They're having not your usual Burns Ceilidh. A Ceilidh is a dance, so they've got a big celebration going on. Robbie Burns, who said, "Life is but a day at most, so enjoy it today, everybody."
Because the aliens could come and get us tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Which is my
wearing
lightning
Melania's
round.
hat.
So we learned this week that there's going to be a new UFO documentary that's premiering out at South by Southwest, and it is called The Age of the Disclosure, and they have a number of government officials, 34 U.S. government and military officials, talking about UFOs and basically confirming that there have been cover-ups, that we're in a race with other nations. And we're not just talking about, well, I mentioned they're government officials, so now Secretary of State Marco Rubio is one of the people who has sat down. James Clapper, the former Director of National Intelligence. This sounds really, really interesting, so we'll have to keep our eyes peeled for that. Well, that is all for this edition of The Culture Show. Tune in Monday for chef, author, and TV personality Alton Brown on his latest book. I have been reading it. It's hysterical.
Love
Food
him.
for thought.
He's
Plus,
funny.
we're Carrie granting you access to our retrospective of the debonair actors' films at the Coolidge Corner Theater. As part of Community Canvas, today you'll find the artwork See More, Be More by Aaron Palazzolo Laparo and Nina Bellucci on the digital mural on our GBH building. To learn more about how your work can be represented, just go to the Culture Show webpage. Thanks to the BPL technical and logistics crew, to everyone who came down. We appreciate seeing you here at the Boston Public Library. We also thank Maddie Geyer, Bill Francis, Sandra Lopez-Burke, Juan Jose Cadena, Chris Hanks, Pat Lally, and Olivia Corcio. And thanks as always to the Lennox Hotel, the Newsfeed Cafe. I'm Jared Bowen. Have an art and UFO-filled weekend.
Where is Mary? Where is she? Where is she? She's just about to close up the library!
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's art and culture program.
Spend your afternoon with us. Stay